Oh. Good evening, everybody. Pete Morris. This is the Zoom for February 4th, 2021. And this is the topic for the evening, a group discussion basically of past and future group buys and other stuff that we're trying to put together. For instance, we're trying to come up with a form for people to be able to volunteer and or let us know of skills or abilities that they have that will help us grow, make even better. You know, I have a list here of about 20 items that I came up with, different kinds of pilot things, CFIs and AMEs and all that kind of stuff. Skills like legal help or medical questions answered, FAA, EAA stuff, financial, nonprofit help, other things that we could do like event planning or website work, videography, all that kind of stuff that would help make our group better than it is already. And that form is still getting developed. We're going to try and maybe come up with some ideas of things we can put in there tonight. And with that, we'll go to the old who you are, where you are, and what you fly. I'm Pete Morris. I'm in Connecticut, where we have a little less than 14 inches of snow because it settled down a little bit. But I went flying today. I got up in the air today. That was wonderful. And I fly my 250, which is new to me, 1963 250. I love it.
I'm Michael Saperton. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. I fly a 1963 PA 24 250, and I have not flown in a few weeks. Actually, took it up for a maintenance flight about a couple days ago, but it was just in the pattern, and still trying to figure out where the gas leak or gas smell is coming from in the cabin after rebuilding the boost pump. There you go.
Ernie James, Southern California, Yucca Valley, PA 24 260. I am flying 2 to 3 times a week still, and we've got a fly-in in Kingman this Saturday, but 6 or 7 Comanches signed up. Adam, if you're serious about derelict Comanches, I think I saw one on the ground at Tehachapi, and I saw one on the ground at Kern Valley.
Could you put the airport codes for those airports in just a chat message to me, and I'll call them tomorrow morning?
Sure, I will.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, and while I'm here, hi everyone, I'm Adam Height. I have a 1964 PA 24 400, and I've just put an offer on a 1959 PA 24 250.
And you are in?
I am currently in Great Britain and soon to be in Arkadelphia, Arkansas.
Cool. Go ahead, anybody else? Key the mic. Who are you? Where are you? And what do you fly?
Sorry, I think got run over there, Tom. What were you saying?
Anybody else? Key the mic.
Well, I could tell you, I don't know if you can hear me. It's Eric Jones in Wisconsin, snowing out, 260C model, and that's about it.
Thank you, Eric. We did hear you.
Hello, this is Hans Adler. I'm in Washington State near Seattle. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. What airport?
Okay. I'm near Jefferson County Airport. It's just south of Port Townsend.
Yeah, my daughter.
Just closed. I'm sorry?
My daughter lives out there, just northwest rather of Seattle.
Oh, okay. Today I just closed on a 260B with the help of Kristen Winter.
Great. Welcome.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm pretty excited.
And this is Pat Donovan. I have a 64 180. I had for 25 years, I guess now, and just love it. I do have a general question for everyone. Does anyone have an airplane that does not already have shoulder harnesses?
I do. Both of mine don't have them.
I don't have them either.
Well, I strongly suggest that you make that your first upgrade.
I've actually told my mechanic not even to ferry the plane until we get them.
This is Ed Hash. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. I have a 1959 Comanche 250. Been in my family since brand new, and based at Deer Valley Airport.
Well, I'm John Westerfield from Coleman, Alabama. I got a C model that says had the tug limits exceeded this past week. And my question to everybody is, where's the go-to guy? Because I understand about 6 months ago, the previous company closed. Any feedback on where to go for tug limit?
Are you, John, are you happy to travel slightly away from Alabama, or have someone travel to you?
Oh, yes.
I've got my mechanic is really experienced. The one that I'm in business with, I can send him over to you if you'd like, and probably sort some sort of discount out because you're a Comanche owner.
Yeah, if you'd give me his contact information, I'd appreciate it.
Throw me your cell number in the Zoom chat, and I'll talk to you later. I don't want to really take up too much time in the Zoom talking about that because people.
Very good. Thank you all.
Go ahead, key the mic. Who are you? Where are you? What you fly?
Hank Spellman, right in the dead center of central Illinois. Fly a 1959 Comanche, 590 pop, and my identifier code is hello, AAA. By the way, there used to be a fix for the sheared off legs, the sheared off tow limits. Unfortunately, the man that did it is no longer with us. And if you will look on Airworthy Comanche, today there was a discussion about whether or not you can weld those things without super duper permission from the FAA. You might find that of interest.
Jim Brown from Calgary, 65-260.
Mark Deep from Nebraska, fly a 64-400, 400 Charlie Juliet.
I'm just going to pop in here. I was just going to pop in here really quick. I saw where Canada is not going to allow the cruise ships in, so I'm going to guess we're not going to fly to Canada either this year. Anybody else have heard that?
I believe the border is still closed.
Yeah, they just announced today that the cruise ships are not allowed in until February of 2022. So my guess is that they're not going to allow us to be flying in anytime soon either.
I imagine the cruise ships are a little bit more locked down though, considering that's, significantly more people, 1,000 people rather than just 1 or 2 on a light aircraft.
Well, we'll see what happens. It's they're a pretty tight country. I know that.
Well, I think they're going to open it up after April the 30th. But you can still fly in with a quarantine of 14 days.
Say that if you're flying in with if you're quarantined, yeah, you fly in and stay in a place for 14 days.
Yes.
Because you can't even fly. I can't fly because I know I can't fly up to Alaska unless I go through Washington. And they told me basically don't even think about it until July when I called Canada today.
Really? Wow.
Yep, that's what they said. They're going June 30th right now for private pilots. Unless you're ferrying an airplane or commercial use, you are not allowed to stop in Canada. So right now they said June 30th.
I may not get home here.
It's pretty frustrating, but I'm going to Alaska. I'm just going to go through Washington to Ketchikan in late May.
You got extra tanks on yours?
I got 90 gallons.
You'll make it.
The 260, yeah, the 260C will make it.
I'm Ed Hash. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona at Deer Valley Airport. I have a 1959 Comanche 250. It's been in my family since it was brand new.
I'm Bill Knibb, and I'm based in New Bern, North Carolina, and I have a 260C. I've had it since 1975 and have many enjoyable trips with it.
You've had it since 1975, did you say?
Yep.
That's awesome.
He's also got a 3-digit ICS number.
Sorry. Pete, I think I stepped on you. I was just trying to chime in.
Yeah, Bill Cadiff also has a 3-digit ICS number. He's been around a while.
Yeah, that would be, wouldn't it? If you're 3 digits?
606, I think one of the 20 oldest or earliest ICS numbers left in the ICS. Bill, good to see you.
Likewise.
CJ Stumpf, Vermont, currently a 180, and then sometimes Dad's 260B. And Eric Jones, glad to see you on because your T-shirts feature prominently in tonight's discussion. Thank you for what you did.
Hey, Bill, are you having any trouble with insurance?
You know, I'm supposed to take an annual every year, take a physical, which doesn't, I do it anyway. And
Is that the insurance company requirement?
that's one of their requirements, yeah. And but I've got to deal with the VA, and the VA takes care of that for me.
I never knew that insurance required that. I know FAA sometimes does on a special issuance.
Well, this is what they told me, that I'm supposed to have an annual physical, which I do anyway. And the VA doctor fills out that biomed thing for me without any problems.
Okay, but is that the insurance company requiring that?
Yes, that's what they told me. No, I haven't, I've got a problem with the plane. I haven't seen it in 4 months. But as soon as if that comes back and I start flying again, yeah. But the doctor's already agreed to fill it out for me. And he's quite a character too. He was a senior on a nuclear sub. And then the Navy said they'd make him a doctor if he'd served for the VA and the Navy. I mean, very, very, very interesting people.
Oh, you got a good guy there. Well, my insurance company, they hiked up the premium. They didn't say anything about medical, but the premium is a third again as much as what younger fellas are. They say when you reach 70, that that's when it goes crazy. I was just wondering if anybody else had problems like that.
I didn't have it when I was 70 years old. That was 20 years ago.
Well, it's good to keep these airplanes flying anyway, if you're up to it. That's great.
It's nice to have somebody experienced in the right seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, the AOPA said that they were going to help take care of all that stuff, and they have not done it. And that's what they promised with basic med, and they have not done it. And I don't know whether I don't know what the deal is with the insurance company. I'm 79 and I'm getting ready to put my plane back in the air. And I can't afford that kind of insurance if I can even get it. So I'll fly it without it. And I know
about 40% of everybody I know that has a single engine airplane is flying without insurance anyway in Southern California.
Can you get just a liability? I think it's the hull that they have a problem with. Can you get a liability policy without hull?
Don't know, gotta ask.
There was somebody that was just on the page today that said they had liability for $270. And then figure you add $1,000 for not in motion. So that's about what I pay. I'm paying $1,200 not in motion with liability. I was quoted $308 for liability only. But I'm 57. That's a little younger.
Yeah. Well, we're well.
But I figure if I get to a point yeah, I don't see any reason, if you can afford it and you don't need it, why pay insurance if you're over 75 or 80 years old on your plane other than liability?
Yeah, if the insurance company is agreeable to doing that.
Yeah, well, if you set a Comanche down off field anywhere for any reason, you might as well leave it there, because fixing it is almost, well, everybody that owns one knows that. My 260B would lay there and die because I wouldn't even try and rescue it. So hull insurance, big deal, but I would like to have liability.
That's my attitude to it, liability at least. And I'm okay with paying not in motion for hurricane. I don't live in Florida. Tornadoes or fire in my hangar, so.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So to let me understand, you carry liability, but not all?
I carry liability when I'm flying only, and then I'm carrying hull on the ground, not in motion, in the hangar, tied down in Florida, wherever. If it's not in motion, I'm covered on the hull for $150,000.
Wow.
And I'm paying $1,200 a year for that, and I pay $1,200.
I'm jealous.
Me
Can I
too,
ask-
for 2,600 over here in California.
Yeah, but that includes flying, right?
Yeah. It includes.
Yeah,
all-
I only have liability and not in motion. I don't have full coverage.
Yeah, the not in motion is about $2,000.
For you?
Who's your company?
Global.
Who's mine? I'm with Global.
Same company.
I am too. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't. What are your liability limits? Do you mind saying?
My liability is 1 million smooth. This is Eric.
Okay. Yeah. I see you.
That's pretty standard.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's why I belong to EAA, is because their insurance is a whole lot better and somewhat cheaper than anything AOPA has got. I kissed that off a long time ago when I was insuring a Glasser 1RG. So I'll never go back to AOP. I'm a 26-year member and I'll never go back to them for insurance. So I go to EAA.
Well, AOPA is, they broker it anyway. It's not, they don't insure.
Yeah, but they're making lots of money off it too, off of us.
For sure.
For sure. And they're real sticky about it.
So I just closed on 260B today, and so I've been calling several insurance people. I finally wound up with Avemco and got a much lower rate from them than anybody else quoted me, probably less than half.
Can I?
Welcome and congratulations. I can tell you're dialed in, and so yeah, welcome to the group of crazy Comanche lovers.
Oh yeah,
Well,
thank you.
pop in and say who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
For insurance
Okay,
wise,
well,
we actually have.
Adam, you're stepping on somebody.
Sorry.
Just a moment. Go ahead.
Oh, Yeah, so I already introduced myself, but I'll do it again. I'm Hans Adler. I'm near Port Townsend, Washington, and just closed on the 260B today. Got it inspected by Kristen, and I need to get it flown up to her shop so I can get the gear AD done and the bladders replaced and a few other small things. But yeah, I went through a couple of brokers and also AOPA, and I'm a pretty low time pilot, so my rate they quoted me was right around $8,000 a year. And
wow.
But through Avemco, I got and that was for $80,000 value hull coverage. Through Avemco, I got the same deal, with $1 million liability and 80,000 hull value for $37.80.
Did you say you're out in Washington?
Yeah, Washington State, south of Port Townsend.
Yeah. Well, I know you're talking about going all the way out to where Kristen, unless she's coming by you, but another option, you're out there. I can't say enough about Danny Stark down at Twin Oaks in Oregon.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, the airplane is currently in Kentucky, so and Kristen knows all about the plane, so I'm gonna stay with her at least until I get it flying.
Yeah, that makes sense. But when you get back to Washington, look up, fly down there and meet with Danny Stark at Twin Oaks Air Park, just outside of Portland.
Danny Starks. Okay, thank you.
I can recommend that too. They did our panel up there. Ron and John's Comanche service uses them to do the mechanical work on installing the instrument panels. It's a good company.
Okay, and that was Twin Oaks Airport.
Yes.
Twin Oaks Air Park, right outside of Portland. Hillsboro, Oregon is their address.
Okay.
And Adam, go ahead.
I was just going to say that we actually have an insurance broker and Comanche owner in the group called David Asman. I've been talking to him for a while. He seems like a very genuine guy. I can't really say if I've got a quote from him yet, but maybe he could be a good bet to try and save you guys some money. He's on our Facebook group, David Asman.
Hans, if you want to message me, because you and I have been working together on Messenger, if you want that contact, just drop me a line and I'll get it to you. Dwight,
okay, thanks. This is the CJ.
Driver with an insurance agency. So we actually have a couple, and they're all great guys. I'm going to do a quick share screen check before we get started here in 7 minutes. So apologize, just ignore your screen, but I'm having some trouble transmitting my video. I just want to make sure my screen will go.
Hey, temporarily open mic. If you want to key your mic, say who you are, where you are, and what you fly. That's the idea.
Chris Burnley. I have a 1968 Comanche 260B from California, but also splitting my time in Kentucky, so back and forth.
Wow.
Jim Brown. I have a Comanche 180 in Detroit, Michigan.
Clement Dion here. I'm from Zenith Park, Saskatchewan, up north, with a Comanche 1959 180, and at minus 35 tomorrow night.
Hi, John Futter, Orange, Mass, 260C 1969, and it's not going to be minus 35.
Greg Hammond from Lawton Fort Sill, Oklahoma, 1960 250. don't know, for about 11 years. Well, longer than that. But
Rich Bergman, 260B, 1967. I'm at Gillespie Field in El Cajon, California, which is, for all you people that don't know, is east of San Diego. Nice airplane, and I'm about halfway through with the gear AD. Hopefully be back in the air pretty quick.
Hey, Rich Bergman, Marty Hench. You said you're going to be, you were halfway done with that 3 months ago.
Yeah, I'm still halfway done with it. Airplanes aren't the only thing that I do. So got a lot of stuff going on. But now that the temperature's getting better, you can sit. I have only 2 temperatures in that hangar since it's not insulated. I have the winter temperature, which is frozen stiff, and it's been very cold in Southern California, and the summer temperature, which is very hot, and I melt easy.
Got it.
CJ, are you back in?
I'm back in with video. Sorry about that. Had a little configuration fixing to do.
It's all yours.
All righty. Hey, everybody, we got 3 minutes till we get started. So just keep jumping in with who you are, where you are, and what you fly. Sorry about my weird glasses, by the way. I had a little glasses disaster, so I've borrowed a pair.
Hey, just a question on that convention coming up this year. I think it's the Southeast tribe that's working on that in Nashville. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, what they had out there for last year was interesting. I don't know if it's going to be the same.
And we will be doing ComancheTown at both Sun and Fun in April and Oshkosh in July. So that's some of for the last, I guess, 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020. Those have been the largest gatherings of Comanches in the world.
Does anybody know if Zach has rescheduled his event?
He is definitely rescheduling his event. So that is the first Comanche Summit, AKA Zach's Fly-In in Seymour, Indiana, which was chosen for 2 reasons. One is it's a World War II airport with so much ramp space that you can park 50 Comanches out there without getting crowded. And there's a 7 airplane hangar with an amazing set of, amazingly equipped. That is looking like it'll happen most likely between Sun and Fun in April and Oshkosh Air Venture in July.
Perfect.
And it's a central location. It's a bit of it's a slight haul for the West Coasters. For the East Coasters, it's generally going to be about a 6-hour flight unless we get headwinds. And Eric, we're just going to coordinate with you, so we'll all be great.
I'll work on that coordination. I can just do circles so everybody will have tailwinds.
Well done, sir.
To the other Southern California pilots, Kingman Fly-In this Saturday. Have a good tailwind coming home.
Nice picture, by the way.
I am so jealous of all the people who get to go to these fly-ins.
Yep. And I'll be getting out to California before too long. There's one last flight test being done for the Trio Pro pilot, and that's going to be done shortly in the 180, and then I'm going to fetch it home and fly across the country. So at that point, I'm hoping to visit everybody.
Are you flying it back to your place then, CJ?
Yeah, if the weather cooperates, which it probably won't because it's the US in winter. But yeah, there'll be a big kitty corridor from Los Angeles back up to Montpelier, Vermont, or Lebanon, New Hampshire, up to the Canadian border, basically on the Atlantic coast. Lucky
We're
me.
not supposed to get up above 0 for the next week, so I think my plane is sitting.
Yeah, that's the situation here in Vermont as well. I cannot. I've looked out 10 days and it doesn't break freezing, far as I can see. So
We
all
don't
you
even break
people-
0.
Oh, you're like literally below 0 Fahrenheit?
0 Fahrenheit for the next 7 to 10 days.
Oh my Lord. Okay. Well, in that case, your weather is going to be our weather. So thanks for the advance warning. All right, it's 7:30, and so welcome everybody. Sorry for the short notice. Just a quick heads up on some of the upcoming ComancheZOOMs, so that you'll all be looking forward to them. An FAA DPE, or designated pilot examiner, has approached us about one that I think all of us pilots want to go to, although he's targeting it initially for CFIs, and that is why students flunk check rides. So we'll probably end up doing a private just CFIs and then one for all of us. ATC in Houston is putting a ComancheZOOM together on all the ways that they save our sorry little fannies when we get into trouble, and a little bit also about what happens after. Like, are you going to get in trouble? And then Will Carpenter had a very interesting engine failure and has been putting his Comanche back together and dealing with his insurance company. And that is unfortunately a common enough scenario that we've asked him if he would be willing to come and talk to us both about, well, not the thing that happened to his engine is fortunately very uncomfortable. Lycomings are usually bulletproof, but his experience in discovering that he no longer had an engine, putting it down in a field, the things that happened on his way down, including the surprises. He initially had targeted a grass strip and then ended up not being able to make that. And then the lessons learned in dealing with the insurance company, dealing with getting your airplane picked up after it's bellied in is a really, surprisingly enough, that'll make or break whether your airplane is able to be rescued, whether a knowledgeable group picks up your airplane, and having an owner that knows what can go wrong can really prevent that from happening. Excuse me for one moment. We've got a paint shop going to come and talk to us about paint, all the things to look for, how to make it last longer. We sort of went down the list of what are the most expensive things we can do to our airplanes, and paint came up third on the list after engines and avionics, and right ahead of propellers. So expect all those things to be covered. And then there are a few others. So let's talk about group buy specials, because they turn out to not just be kind of a great way to save money and upgrade our airplanes. They turn out to actually affect the value of the entire type when it comes to the Comanches. So tonight we're going to be talking not just about what we've done and how they worked and what's coming up, and we really, really want your ideas and input on what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you want, because that actually steers what happens next. So if you have things that you want to see done, just start typing into the chat window and throw your ideas in there. If you have thoughts or comments as this goes along, again, throw your ideas, comments into the chat window. So let's talk a little bit about group buy specials in the Comanche marketplace, because it turns out it's not the same as other marketplaces. And so let's talk about organizing the marketplace. In order to effectively do group buy specials, we actually had to define what was uniquely valuable about Comanches. And believe it or not, a few years ago, our prices were going down steadily. And you could get, $15,000, $20,000 functional Comanches were unfortunately not unheard of. And I think those days, as of about a year ago, are gone, hopefully for good. Our goal is to make people start going through boneyards trying to rescue hulls. When we've made it there, we know we've really succeeded. We needed to define the unique value of the Piper Comanche, and strangely enough, because I was organizing ICS's events, that just hadn't been done for some reason. And so the zinc chromate, there were some things that were just unique to Comanches. They were unique to the Lock Haven airplanes, but the Lock Haven airplanes were the Comanches, the Aztecs, and the Arapahoes, of which there are, I think, 1 or 2 of the Arapahoes flying. Does anybody know if there were any other metal airplanes built at the Lock Haven factory other than the Comanches, the Aztecs, and the Arapahoes? If you do, feel free to unmute and just shout in. But to my knowledge, I think those were the types built. So zinc chromate renders enormous corrosion resistance, and it is normally only done for seaplanes, and it costs a lot of money, but it was done for every Comanche ever built. And in a few moments, I'm going to be playing a video from A2A Simulations, because they purchased both a Comanche 250 and a 400 for their business. But when their business took off, they said, well, we want to keep our 250, but they bought, if I recall, an Aerostar. And, you know, they're beautiful airplanes and they go really fast. But I said, hey, how do you guys like your Aerostar? And they started cussing, and they said, and I was like, what? And they said, well, you know, they're on the Connecticut coast, corrosion problems. We just don't have them in the Comanches. And it's part of the reason why that Cherokee wing spar AD is not going to apply to us. One is that the Comanche wing spar is totally different. But the other is that we simply don't have corrosion issues. As long as we do not scratch our zinc chromate coating, or if we do scratch it, we repair it or cover it with something else equivalent, we're just remarkably corrosion resistant. And it's why the Comanche is aging so gracefully. It wasn't really expected to do so, but it's incredibly valuable. And nobody knew about it. It wasn't really widely discussed until the last couple of years. And you can credit a small group of people who started really beating that drum, and then all of us figured it out and picked it up. And you just, what can you say other than, yeah, only Comanches and Aztecs? I mean, if you've got a Cessna, a Mooney, a Bonanza, a Cirrus, a plastic airplane, you don't have zinc chromating. The other thing is Comanches were an engineering project. They were not a marketing project. Most airplanes, because they're so expensive, are really marketing projects where engineering comes in. And the Comanches were a proposal to Piper back in the original days before Piper was sold, which it has been several times, to build an all-metal airplane that would be incredibly efficient. And the Bonanzas were already out, so there was already a good example to chase. And the Moonies were coming out, and you've probably all heard the stories that the strong rumors that maybe some of that great Mooney engineering might have been kind of sort of appropriated when Al Mooney had got weathered in and had to leave his Mooney overnight in one of the Piper hangars. But the thing that happens with an engineering project is you tend to get things done that marketing would never agree to because it makes them too expensive, but engineers love. And so Comanches were incredibly efficient and incredibly strong. And in a way, it contributed to our ultimate demise, because although we all Piper blamed the flood of the factory for why the Comanche stopped being manufactured. In fact, they've been looking for an excuse to replace the Comanche with the Cherokee. The Comanche has almost twice the parts of the Cherokee. Every single rib is a different size, and the airplanes are hand assembled, and each part has to go in the right place. When I was at Oshkosh, one of the guys that had assembled Comanches came up, and Zach Grant's airplane was out in front of the ICS tent as the display model. And he went over and he touched the wing, and he looked at me and he said, I riveted this wing. I remember putting this airplane together. That was how much pride the Lock Haven union shop took in putting these airplanes together. There was real pride, and only the most senior people, he said, were allowed to work on the Comanche line. So they were assembled by experts. It didn't mean they were perfect. There was definitely some weird stuff that happened at the factory, but Comanches were built special. They were engineered special. They were built special. But to make it quick, that the short value is that the zinc chromate dip, and then I'm going to share the A-to-A simulations video because they were actually talking about simulating aircraft, but because their personal business aircraft was a Comanche, they talked about why they selected it, and they ended up quantifying the value in a really compelling way. We will get to group buys, but it's important to understand that it was critical to put the unique value of the Piper Comanche out there, and then we'll get to organizing owners as a force, which you can see at the bottom of the group buys screen. But that was the second key step in assembling successful group buys. So let me just do a share screen here and have you look at this video, which some of you have seen and may be new to some of you. I'm starting it at 1 minute and 8 seconds in.
In 2011, we started to research the ideal aircraft for us. The first aircraft we considered was Piper's reliable workhorse, the Cherokee 235. While the aircraft can carry an incredible load, the space is limited, and having fixed gear reduces the speed, which can make for some very long trips. We looked to Mooney, including the stretched cabin M20F. While the lightweight Mooney provides fast and efficient transportation, it just can't carry that much. And of course, we looked at Beechcraft Bonanzas, even knowing that the initial purchase price and maintenance costs tend to be high. However, the biggest surprise to us by far was the Bonanza's limited load carrying capability. For example, if there are 4 people in the cabin, you can't carry their bags. So our search continued. The Cessna 182RG. 2 doors is a major plus for loading and unloading, and the baggage area can take a respectable 200 pounds. While the 182RG met all of our minimum requirements, it has the most expensive purchase price of the bunch. So our unexpected journey ended when we stumbled upon a not-so-common airplane, the Piper Comanche 250.
Different high-speed single-engine airplanes, and you said, well, what about the Comanche? And I said, geez, you can't do better than that. That'd be perfect. And of course, that's what it turned out to be.
Let me put it this way. If I can load it in my Honda Accord, I can load it in my Comanche. With its 90-gallon fuel capacity, it can fly over 1,200 miles non-stop. That's from New York to Chicago, to St. Louis, or even Miami. The Comanche's landing gear, with a full-size nose wheel, was designed to operate out of unfinished strips. And two-niner Papa has proved itself after 3 years of punishment without a single issue.
Many of you saw that packing segment and thought about getting ready for Oshkosh and Sun and Fun.
Am I crazy? Or does this aircraft look beautiful just sitting on jacks?
All right. So did that pretty well quantify what's so amazing about our airplanes?
Yes, it did. And that cheapo car jack under the airplane scared the hell out of me.
Good catch, Hans. So the that video plus the zinc chromate was the first critical thing. And if we go to the next screen, which is organizing owners as a force, the next thing in organizing successful group buys, and part of the reason I'm going through this is we all create these group buys. What happens is just somebody comes and says, why don't we do this? And then we do it. But we need to understand ourselves as a market. We as owners are more involved with our maintenance and deciding what we purchase and install on our aircraft than almost any other comparable aircraft. Cirrus have an average, you know, they're a $750,000 airplane with an average, rumored average $22,000 average annual. So when we're complaining about our annuals, you could own a Cirrus, so be grateful. The Bonanzas and twin Bonanzas in general, having spoken with a lot of vendors, it's more customary to go to a big Bonanza maintenance shop and then the shop owners sell to the owners. We tend to make a lot of decisions about our own aircraft. And this has to do in part also with the fact that we're the only type of aircraft in large production. There were almost 7,000 of us built. And as of 2 days ago, the FAA database showed, I think 3,449 US registered Comanche aircraft of all types. So just under, 3,500 plus the other ones registered worldwide. And the US changed its registrations to require every 3 years registration. So we think at least 90% are probably still flying. And the FAA agrees with that estimate. So we're still a pretty good marketplace. But we weren't very organized. There was this rumor out there that Comanche owners were cheap. And yeah, we can buy a Comanche at a discount price. We are changing that, as we mentioned earlier, but our airplanes are arguably better than the comparable aircraft because of the zinc chromating, because of that incredible assembly, and because of the factors that the 8A simulation video quantified so well. And so we didn't want to go out there as Comanche owners are cheap. We wanted to go out there as these airplanes are incredibly capable and incredibly valuable when upgraded. And then, and so we had the message, and we were able to quantify, and the message started to spread. And a lot of young people, especially young professional pilots, started discovering and acquiring the aircraft. And that turned out to be an important message as well, because the ComancheTown started to happen in 2018 when there was some kerfluffle in the ICS, and we suddenly had this realization that it was our 60th anniversary. And we weren't going to be, I know I saw what Tim said. Yeah, it's great for those who have them. It's not so great for those looking. Sorry, get in quick while you can. They're going to go up further if we have anything we can say about it. So the good news is it's like investing, right? Get in and then keep our airplanes as valuable as possible. So we weren't going to have a party for our 60th birthday, and we were like, well, we can't not have a party. So Pat Donovan had just been declared persona non grata, even though we had elected him, and he and the charges against him were manufactured. And so Pat had been in the habit of parking airplanes at Oshkosh, and we went, hey, Pat, will you park airplanes again? We'll stand with you in case anything happens. And so ComancheTown was born. And it instantly went very big. It was 56 airplanes total and 35 spaces in our first ComancheTown. But what happened there that was so important wasn't just that there was a big group of Comanches parking together. It was that we had what we called the 30 under 30, an entire row of beautiful Comanches owned by people under 30 years old who brought all their friends. It was like having a frat party in the middle of like the old village. And Eric Jones rescued us because we needed t-shirts. We wanted to go get everybody in matching t-shirts, and Eric knew a guy and somehow came up with, and Zach Rand came up with the first design and Eric came up with the second design. I just want to screen share two things so you can see the ComancheTown designs. But what was most important, and they're just fun to look at, what was most important is we went running around and we said, hey, everybody who's at ComancheTown, if you can get up at 7 in the morning, we'll buy coffee. please come to the EAA general meeting and let's just get together, and at 7:30 we'll walk over and we'll be there when it starts. And we did it. We had over 40 owners in matching blue t-shirts that looked like this. Hang on, I need to screen share again. And you'll have to stand me navigating. Let's see. So I'll need to just get permission to screen share from the host right now who's screen sharing. Okay. So this is Eric Jones special ComancheTown design. This is one of our final candidates. You'll note no chute required in the top left. And this is actually one of the ones you may see in the future. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was, forgive all of the extra text, but see that ComancheTown and this right below it, it might be a little hard to see unless you zoom in on your screen, are all of the different Comanche logos Piper ever used on our Comanches. 40, if you look through the EAA general meeting photos, you'll notice a shot towards the stage, and right front and center is this big blob of light blue. And that blob is Comanche drivers, and it is the biggest blob in the entire 200,000 member EAA general meeting. That got us noticed as a type. And the next year we did it again with the white t-shirts, and guess what? They were honoring autopilot vendors. And what was arguably one of the 3 most important things we needed as a type to become more valuable? You guessed it, autopilots. So we stood up and said, hey, we're Comanche drivers. And we kind of pointed at the big blob of t-shirts and said, notice us, we need autopilots. And this year, we have 3 major autopilot projects. We're expecting Genesis to announce this week the approval of the STEC 3100, and there's a group buy special related to that. We're expecting Trio ProPilot to announce within the next couple of months. We're waiting for FAA approval on the singles, and the twins should be going in. And by the way, bonus, they didn't think they'd be able to include the 400s, but it looks like they were able to do so. And so the market was created, and the visibility began to go up for not just Comanches as a great airplane, but us Comanche owners as an important group that was worth doing group buy specials for. Does anybody have any comments or questions at this point? The silence is deafening.
Is anybody thinking about making a pin logo like we had for ICS? It would be really nice for ComancheTown. Something that IDs us.
Yeah, that is a brilliant thought, Rich.
We have a logo that we put together, I put together for the Comanche website, our Northeast Tribe website. And it's pretty nice.
Well, that to give credit where credit is due goes to Steve Davis.
True, correct.
But yes, and Steve had put together some great possible logos and offered them. We'll probably group source when it comes down to it, because that should be all of ours decision. But you're right on. So Rich, you're figuring that a logo will really make it, brand us and make it identifiable?
Yeah, I think I have 2 Comanche ICS visors, and one of them looks like it is an archaeological artifact. And so I moved my QB pin and my EAA pin and this, that, and the other thing, and the AOPA pin to the other one. And I've worn it half to death, and it would be nice. I I wear visors anyway to keep the sun and the glare out of my eyes. It's a type 1 diabetes problem, and almost all of us that have it. And that's why I always wear a visor. So it would be nice to have one for ComancheTown, because ICS quit making theirs, along with everything else that ICS quit doing. And it would be nice to have a logo, I think, so that just because, you know, we go to different aircraft meetings and stuff like that. Gillespie Pilots Association guys wear all their stuff for their individual planes, and I think it would be a nice deal. And I mean, I would pay 10 or 15 bucks for one, you know, something that fits on the hat.
Can I second that, in that having a logo like that would be fantastic if we could print small aircraft decals that can go on the tail of an aircraft to say this is a Comanche owners or Comanche organization owned aircraft. And so when we see them all lined up at Oshkosh, you can see them all next to each other and see the support, the wide support. And you know, when you look at a plane that's been owned by a Comanche enthusiast, you know, and especially if you could then also, you know, find specific shops that and companies that we like to work with, and we can have our logo saying, hey, you know, this is approved by us. These are good guys for the Comanche community approved.
I love it.
And I agree with that too. I think something else would be nice is to have the logo put onto like a flag. So, you know, at home, if you have a flagpole and you got your flag up, you can run up the Comanche flag underneath it. Or when we go out to Oshkosh or something like that, have them at the campsite.
And that also goes with the people who put the American flags behind the planes in their T hangars and stuff. That could be an amazing flag for that.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that'd be awesome.
Because loads of people do have flags in their hangars.
CJ,
Go for it. That's gorgeous.
And nice. That was nice Havasu fly in.
Brilliant.
That is awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're all proud to wear it.
I love it. Did they charge for that? Or was it just something that somebody printed together and gave to the participants?
Actually, PJ, his company built them and give them out. They were free. Yes.
That is great.
Comanche owners. It was great.
Here's some of the logos that we came up with. If you want to see them. This is the one that's on the website.
I like them.
And it is ideal, you know, for a visor or a jacket or an arm or whatever, or a flag.
I like the one on the very left bottom. Nice coloring.
Oh yeah, that's more difficult if you're going to embroider it. These will embroider very nicely.
Right. The one thing about that though, the people looking at that recognize the Comanche, you know.
Yep.
That instead of like the Piper Comanche sign is nice, but the people that don't know Comanches or anything about airplanes, it wouldn't make much sense to them.
Well, we had to give them a hint by putting the tail feathers on.
We could do that, yeah.
Now, you know, back in the old days, they used to have a set of wings that you could wear, you know, like pilot wings. That were the Comanche ones. That wouldn't be bad to start doing that again.
Right.
Jim, do you think you could find that? That's a great idea.
Maybe we should all go for face paint or something like that, you know, like they do for the Super Bowl.
Now you're talking. I like it.
We're going to lock him up for that idea.
DJ, why don't you go on to some of the group buys we've done and maybe get to some of the ones we're going to think about.
Will do. Thanks, Pete. And thanks everybody for the input. It sounds like we need to make flags, logo pins, decals, t-shirts, and jackets. And wings.
That's another group buy right there.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'll put a note out and we'll find out how many people are seriously interested, and then we'll go negotiate incredible deals. That is how some of them work.
That would be awesome.
Good deal. We will make it so. So let's talk about group buy specials. We started with a real focus on safety, efficiency, and bang for the buck. And the very first one, I want to explain how important it is. And we'll need to move forward one screen on the group buys. Perfect. Sorry for the small print, everybody. I want to talk a little bit about, I see, okay, shoulder harness and prop balancing clinic got combined. They're actually, so that very first line under group buy specials passed, where it says shoulder harness prop balancing clinic, those are actually two separate group buys, they just got combined. I want to briefly go through the evolution of these, and I'll try to be quick, but it's important to understand how much control we all individually have in making these happen. So President Pat Donovan noted that a bunch of Comanches had shown up and a third of them didn't have shoulder harnesses. And I get a call from a twin driver of longstanding, and he said, CJ, what are you going to do about this shoulder harness problem? And I said, Al, I said, I'll tell you what, let's work together. Let's make the list of everybody who can do shoulder harnesses for Comanches, which was only 2 companies. And if you'll do the call with me and help a little bit, we'll make it happen. So Al Murray, who has a 9 November Yankee, who used to fly to Canada all the time from New York and Maryland, was essentially responsible for the shoulder harness group buy special happening. If he had not made that call and said, yes, all right, I'll get in harness with you, it wouldn't have happened. And there are quite a few of them that happened this way. So what that was a 10 to 15% discount off of the cost of buying the shoulder harness kit. And both Phil Air, there are 2 companies that have shoulder harnesses that are STC'd for the Comanche. If you have not gotten a shoulder harness yet for your Comanche, before you do anything else, before you buy any avionics, please, we beg you, put your shoulder harnesses in. The very first shoulder harness group buy, it turns out, we didn't know this at the time, we thought we were the first. It turns out the very first shoulder harness group buy was organized after my predecessor in the Northeast, who was very safety oriented, was out west in Sheridan, Wyoming. He took off with 4 people in his 250 in a high density altitude situation and vapor locked. And they didn't know it. They are electric fuel pump vapor locked. And they did a good, apparently they did a good off airport landing, but they hit a berm on their rollout. And they did not have shoulder harnesses. And both of the front seat passengers were killed when their heads impacted the panel in an otherwise completely survivable accident. So that was the impetus for the very first shoulder harness group buy special. And just a piece of history there, but it's part of the reason why if you go onto the Piper Comanche Facebook group or Delphi, or you talk to anybody in Northeast, you'll generally hear just, it's not sexy, but your shoulder harnesses are an essential piece of safety equipment. At the time the Comanches were built, they were not standard. And in fact, only the 70s and 71s and 72s, any of them came out even with the attachment points installed. So if you call, officially these group buys have ended, but I am told that they have been continued. If you have not gotten a shoulder harness installed and you need it, please post into the chat window or send an email to officers@northeastcomanche.org, officers@northeastcomanche.org. And those numbers, we take them over and we say, okay, we need you guys to step up again. And they'll do a discount. In addition, they're getting more organized about shops that have experience installing shoulder harnesses. So shoulder harnesses, although it's a past group buy, has happened twice, and we're expecting another one in the near future. A quick note, there are two types. You can either do a shoulder, and the key thing is just to get your front seat passenger shoulder harnesses. There are the inflatable lap belt shoulder harnesses, the inflatable airbag harnesses. There are also, in terms of shoulder harnesses, the retractable reels like you have in modern cars, and the fixed ones. The fixed ones are a little bit less expensive, and oddly enough, many of the vendors recommend them. And the retractable reels just have a little bit more that can go wrong with them, but they're convenient. Many people just remove them in flight and then reattach them when they're going to be landing. Prop balancing clinics. I mentioned this one, although it's not as well known, because you can do a group buy for a piece of equipment, but you can also do it for a procedure. Prop balancing is something that we can do. We mentioned it on the propeller Zoom, and things like transponder checks. Anything that you can do in an hour or two with a shop where you can organize a big bunch of Comanches is eligible for a group buy. So the prop balancing clinic saved in one day, saved everybody a couple of $1,000s, and it introduced people to a procedure that they weren't that familiar with that can actually reduce cracking in your airframe related to vibration, give you longer engine life. And for those that are familiar with stainless steel exhaust, they'll double your warranty if you balance your prop. So, that sort of tells you something. So the deal there was just, we talked to a shop that had a prop balancing apparatus, dynamic prop balancing, and made an agreement that if we brought him 10 engines, he would do it for $150 an engine. And the way it worked and why it worked, and this is true for virtually all group buys, we look at the process for the vendor. Like, how does your business work? How can we as owners make this more efficient for you so that you can pass some of that efficiency back to us? And in the case of prop balancing, the key thing is they take out their equipment, and then for the singles, they actually just need to attach the equipment, and then they, you fire up your airplane as many as 3 times. They shoot dynamically balanced by adding weights. In the case of an A&P, as you probably heard last week in the propellers ComancheZOOM, onto the, oh gosh, I'm having a senior moment here. It's the ring gear. And then propeller shops can actually mess with your weights, but A&Ps can't. But anyways, they put weights on, and then they just keep refining and refining until you're done. If they shoot you the first time and you're in tolerances, then you're done. And in this case, this shop, even though they attached their equipment, didn't charge us if we didn't need a balance. But the place where we could really help is twin engine aircraft. You have to remove the lower cowling. And so the agreement we made was that we would all schedule our prop balances. And so we developed scheduling software so everybody could pick a slot. And then owners helped other owners remove the lower cowling, which involves removing lots and lots of screws, and carefully put them someplace so they weren't scratched or damaged. And then we would help reassemble, and then the shop would just check over our reassembly to make everything copacetic. That saved them so much time that, oh, cool, PJ. That saved them so much time that the improved efficiency allowed them to still make money and save us. The average of $250 to $350 a balance was reduced to $150. So that's how a group buy special works when it's really, really working well. And that's how come some of the really deep discounts can happen. I'm seeing your requests for prop balancing, and what I think we're going to try to do is reach out to those we see in the chat window to help figure out what shops you want to work with, and then tie you into the software we develop so you guys can help get everybody scheduled, and we'll help get the word out. I mean, obviously Piper Comanche Facebook group will help, Delphi will help, and then we can help with the mailing list by putting things into the invites that go out to about 4,000 people. Good. And PJ's taking the lead on organizing a KGEU. So let's talk to them and explain the process and see whether we can create a situation where we get something that still makes them money and also they get to meet owners, and then we'll benefit from that discount. So the big thing, everybody, you need to do is find somebody that seems like a reputable shop that has dynamic balancing equipment. You can check with Daryl Poole, and his email address is on the Propeller Zoom. And if somebody has a moment that could post it into the chat window, his email address and phone number. Daryl's also happy to help with, the best kinds of prop balancers. If your shop's like, I have one of these, you can say to Daryl, hey, is this a decent prop balancer? And he'll be happy to help. He mentioned too, we used, oh gosh, Pete, do you happen to remember the prop balancing equipment?
No, I don't.
I think it was Dynavibe, and that worked well. It wasn't one of the two that Daryl mentioned, but it was fine. And that's it. We circled back around afterwards to make sure everybody had a good experience and was either happy or didn't see any downsides to the prop balance, and everybody was. We said people, one person was like, my crack stopped. Another person was like, it's way smoother. Their passenger reported it was quieter. Anyway, so find somebody who's got prop balancing equipment. We can get on the phone with you and help talk to them about what we can do to help make it great for them and help organize the owners and make sure the right kind of equipment is there so that everybody's airplanes come out of this the same or better than they went in. And that's it. Then just have a blast and let everybody know how it works. We needed mini clinics is a different thing. That's instruction. So when the access to, and this is again something that we can help you organize locally. When access to experienced Comanche instruction was decreased because Avshilo just deleted all of the existing listings for all of the original CPPP program that had been created and organized by Zach Grant and Larry Larkin. And people didn't know they were happening because they just didn't appear anymore in the normal places. They sort of starved and stopped giving instruction, and that left us with a shortage. So we created the mini clinics to try to help address the fact that there was a need for more experienced instruction. And what we did was we picked the key areas that we knew Comanches had particular Comanche specific instructional areas. So Comanches are a little different in slow flight and stalls because of our lamino flow wings. And everybody should just know about emergency procedures for your type of aircraft, but there's something that we just generally don't do in VFR. So if you've been flying for a dozen or more years, have you really done a thorough review of your emergency procedures? I don't know, most of the people I've talked to haven't. So, and then sticking your landings. Well, Comanches are notorious for landing several times as you go down the runway. And so, airspeed control on final and how to put your airplane down and keep it down was a useful thing. And so we just listed off the key areas that Comanche drivers had stuff that came up. Fuel management is another key one. And we boiled them down into 45-minute lessons. And then we found Malcolm Dickinson very generously reduced his normal rate. And then we did something a little bit special. We said, hey, for anybody who wants to take a mini clinic, 45-minute lesson, it's inexpensive, it's easy to fit into your schedule, and it's fun. And then we said, if you're willing to let somebody ride along in the back seat, please let us know. And then anybody who was at the fly-in could go in the back seat for the mini clinic. And you were expected to just throw $20 into the kitty. And so the group buy special in that case ended up being that you had a reduced rate for the instructor who could teach multiple students and was kind of doing it just to help us out. And we could have multiple students in an airplane learning the lesson and kicking in to reduce the rate for everybody. Electro or electronic ignition. This one is a technical thing. Most Comanche drivers were like, why would I want to spend all of this money when all I'm doing is replacing a magneto? So we negotiated a great group buy special, but we also needed to explain why you would want to install an electronic ignition. And so I'm going to screen share again. And I'm again just going to need permission to share from the group buy screen. So here is an example of a technical group buy. I'm going to scroll down and probably make you all have a headache. So in this case, there were both Surefly and Electro or electronic ignition systems. The key things about electronic ignition, Surefly is a magneto replacement, Electro is a full ignition system with a coil. And so one of the biggest things is their incredibly strong spark. But the big thing was to explain why you would want to put an electronic ignition system in your airplane. And the short story is, it's one of the very few investments you can make in an airplane that actually starts to pay you back. If you're flying 75 hours a year or more, putting in an Electro or electronic ignition, which results in a greater reduction in fuel consumption, will actually start to pay you back in about 3 to 5 years. And you're like, 3 to 5 years, that sounds like a long time, but try getting your GPS to pay you back. So in this case, reduced fuel burn, slightly faster speeds, air speeds, especially at altitude, meant that this was a no-brainer. Once you put your shoulder harnesses in, electronic ignition, and in addition to the slight increase in airspeed, so it's a speed mod, and the reduction in fuel burn, so it's an efficiency mod, for some, especially fuel-injected owners, boy, those hot starts were just like they just got their blood pressure up. And so the idea that you wouldn't have any more hot starting problems was enough to sell this for some people. But the big thing is most people didn't know about these benefits. And so once again, it was a matter of organizing ourselves as a marketplace. So we said, all right, how many Comanche buyers does it take to make you be able to order the equipment that you're going to sell us in a big enough quantity that you can pass the savings on to us? And we then went to our Comanche drivers and we said, if there are enough of us that want to buy this, they're going to give us a great deal. And so we explained here, I'm scrolling down, we explained what it does. As manifold pressure starts coming down, as altitude increases, the firmware starts advancing the timing curve, right? Because the less dense fuel air mixture at altitude takes longer to burn, right? And so they're adjusting the timing to be optimal, and this longer, stronger spark to be optimal for our normally fixed timing engines at altitude. And our magnetos are optimized basically for low altitudes, and having the variable timing makes our engines operate more efficiently at high altitudes. And that's why we get higher air speeds, better manifold pressures, better power at altitude than we normally get. The magic marriage is that our laminar flow wings are most efficient and strut their stuff at 8,000 and above. And this makes our engines match our wings. So this was one of the earliest ones. So here you see it, 1.5 to 2 gallons per hour fuel reduction on the 6 cylinders, and 3/4 to 1 gallon per hour fuel reduction on the 4 cylinders. There's the math, reported speed improvements. Some people have reported better speed improvements, but 2 to 5 knots is what people are reporting. The big thing happens is that and then we said to people, but you might not want to get this unless you're going into maintenance and you've got a mag replacement or mag overhaul coming up, and then the numbers start to work well. And so that's it. So we said to people, if 5 buy I think it was the 6 cylinders and 10 buy the 4 cylinders, sorry, it's the reverse. Then instead of 4,000 list price, they were going to give it to us for 3,000. And for the 6 cylinders, instead of 6,400, they were going to give it to us for 4,850. And they threw in shipping, which is normally a couple $100. And here was where we proved our stuff. 184 comments in response to this on Facebook, plus the stuff on Delphi, plus the stuff on the Northeast. We sold them completely out of product. And all of a sudden, that story meant the world started to take notice, sit up and take notice of Comanches. We sold a small vendor completely out of 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder kits. Nobody could buy an electronic ignition system. Moonies couldn't, Cessnas couldn't. Nobody could buy a 4 or 6-cylinder ignition system because we bought all of them. That's how powerful our marketplace was. And that was the critical turning point to get the major manufacturers to start looking at Comanches as something they wanted to STC for. So I just want to take a moment to congratulate everybody. Because if we all hadn't stepped up and shown them that if they stepped up and supported us, we care about our airplanes. We're not just cheap. We fly them. We make decisions for them. We want efficiency. We want safety. We want speed. And we'll go for it if it makes sense for us. And that is a key thing that's changed the value of Comanches in the marketplace is us. We organized. We showed them we're a force. So I think we probably, unless anybody has any questions about the autopilot group buys, those are recent enough that I think, are most people pretty familiar with the autopilot group buys, or does anybody want me to quickly discuss what the group buy specials are on autopilots that are ongoing right now?
Why don't we do a teaser on what's coming up?
Sounds good. It sounds like everybody's up on the current ones. So briefly, although this isn't well known, Aero LEDs, if you purchase LED position lights or any LED lights, beacons, et cetera, from Aero LEDs, there's an 18% discount. And that's ongoing right now. You can put in, Andy Davey, are you there? Because this is an Andy Davey. Just as shoulder harnesses were Al Murray. This is an Andy Davey thing, and I saw Andy on earlier. And if you are Andy, can you unmute? Nope, I think he may have had to leave. It is PA24 180. And I'm going to make a note to myself just to make sure that if it isn't PA24 180, then it is going to be for anybody trying to buy lights. And it's Aero LEDs is the company.
And then, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to wonder, about the autopilots and some of the heavy hitter items like engine replacement and all that. If there's any kind of way we could get some feedback on not just the part, which, obviously you've been quite conscientious in, assembling these discounts and stuff, group buys. But I would like to see some sort of a database where we can see the average or people would loop back with this was the part cost and this was what we paid for install if it was required to be installed by a shop or it was a non-owner install type of item, and give us sort of a floating database from like the West Coast, the East Coast, South, North, and so when we do get things like estimates and stuff on jobs, we can sort of see where they lie.
That is a brilliant idea, Rob.
Right.
Would you be
Specifically
willing?
to, Comanche single and twins and all that stuff.
You know, would you be willing to, first of all, that's a brilliant idea and it's much needed. Would you be willing to work with us on putting something like that together?
Nah, no, I would, yeah, I would. Sure, we could take it offline, but I think
Okay.
it would be valuable.
All right. Consider yourself drafted. It's a brilliant idea.
Also, does anybody know about, I keep hearing that that Garmin is about to certify their G500 pilot, autopilot. And, but whenever I talk to an avionics shop, it's always, oh yeah, a couple months, it's any day now. And they've been saying that for, I don't know, a year and a half.
I am going to turn this meeting to Eric Jones because I want to just give Eric credit for taking the lead on really just staying on top of Garmin. They've got Owen's 260B in and Eric.
Yeah, I can just tell you, I'm going to contact them again when he asked me to at the end of February, but I'll tell you what I know right now. As CJ said, Owen's 260B is in the shop. They got delayed a little bit due to COVID, a little bit behind schedule. But right now they are still targeting that the STC, well, that all the work will be done in April, going in for approval in April with expected approval in early to mid-May. One of the other things that may or may not delay that, but they are also, because of the interest and because of the contacts, because I think partially of Zach Grant and maybe a few others, they are looking at the early model 250s as also to be included. I'm not sure about the 180s, but I know we did talk about the 250s without the electric flaps, et cetera, to be included in the same STC or same approval process. That is their goal. That's what they want. The other thing that kind of floored me a little bit is that starting this late spring, they are also going to then begin on the PA30s and all twins. That is on their radar. That is not something that is going to be left off the table. There are some unfortunate things with the PA30. And the only thing I will tell you about that is that it is going to require 275s. They will not work for some reason with the G5s. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. But there's something, I don't know if it's what the technicalities were, because I was so excited about everything else, I kind of tuned them out on the PA30s. But that is on the schedule, but they said it would require the 275s, and it will be the GFC 500, not the 600. So it would be the one for the same one that would go into the singles. And that's where I'm at. So I'm fully anticipating by my next meeting with him, he's going to tell me everything is still good and that they're still shooting for April and that the units would be available to ship by the end of May. That's what I know right now.
Good job, Eric, and thanks for the update. Any questions?
No, that's really good news. I've been calling different avionics shops, getting just all kinds of crazy stuff. But I'm having one, the 500 put in my wife's, our Cessna. So
cool.
Well, and I'm just right now, I just made the commitment today. I'm putting in my 275s now. I don't have G5s in mine, in my 260, but I'm putting it in and I'm going to be ready for it. So I'm looking forward to that. And I fly a GFC 500 in my PA12. It's just such a nice solid unit. And I was over 2 days ago, I was over looking at a 182 RG that was having one installed. That is one stout unit with some very nice servos set up there.
Yep. So really in short on the autopilots, so Eric, thank you so much for everything you've done to keep Garmin aware of the Comanches. Just to credit this group again, what happened with the early Comanches is Garmin, we did the autopilot series with the ComancheZOOM, the new life for old autopilots on how to keep your old autopilots going and repaired and maintained. And then Okay, I'm looking at the comments, just trying to catch it. So, all right, so in brief, I'm not going to be able to talk and monitor the chat window. So I'm going to have somebody else scoop that and then jump in and say, CJ, answer these questions on autopilots. But we're expecting the STEC 3100 approved. I think it's this week. If you have any desire to get that half price, if you've already got an STEC 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 series and you want to upgrade, if you put in your order this week before the STC issues, they will give, I'm just going to stop my video because my internet connection is a little flaky. They will give you basically a 50% discount if you're going from a 2-axis autopilot, like a 30 or a 50, or $10,000 for the system. And then they will, for free, either replace or overhaul your servos and give you an extra year warranty. You literally have days to let them know that you want to do the upgrade at half price. The system's quite expensive. It's $20,000 to just get a new STEC 3100 and install it. And the installation is expected to be on the order of 40 to 60 hours, depending on whether you're doing an upgrade or a new install. But the STEC 3100s, they've got more experience than anybody else in the business. Than the Comanche singles were their 978th STC project. Garmin, as Eric said, is expecting late spring. Just a quick note because it's fun. Owen Catherwood bought his Comanche. Okay, so Pete Lautensack just noted that $16,000 quoted for him for the 3100. Pete, is that installed price for your upgrade? And then the key thing is that, oh wow, the key thing is that the Garmin decision to include the older autopilots was literally made because of a ComancheZOOM. So they were here talking to us about their expectations for the later model Comanches, and a million people are in there in the chat window going, hey, wait, what about my 180? What about my 250? And I texted Zach Grant, who sent the entire list of per year Comanches manufactured. And the key point that made to Garmin is that more than half of Comanches ever manufactured were manufactured between 1958 and 1963. So they were leaving on the table over half of the potential Comanche market, or almost 2,000, or like 1,800 airplanes. And here we were as an organized marketplace buying autopilots. I mean, there are over 85 deposits for the Trio Pro Pilot. There are over 60 commitments for Garmin, and I don't even know how many STECs. So we're not anything to sneeze at. And so they looked at the physical numbers that we provided them literally during the Zoom. And I got a message from Wayne McGee of Garmin saying, can you help us to locate an early model 260 near our engineering facilities in Spokane, Washington? And the next thing I knew, they had located one. And the next thing we heard is that they had changed their minds. So again, just a round of applause to all of us. This is us working together, changing major vendors' minds about support. Go ahead.
CJ, this is Pat. Hey, I had a question for you. I signed up to have the 3100 put in my Comanche. And
Great.
I have the Aztec 30 in it now. And I gave them a half down on it. And my price to have the system put in and to have a couple of other instruments put in was around 30,000.
That sounds, oh, and a couple of other instruments?
Right. I had to have a slip turn coordinator put in, and then I had to have a HSI put in.
This would not be the right venue, but if you want to get with me afterwards and look at the breakdown, your cost for the unit, I will say this, your cost for the unit should have been 10,000, given that you were going from an STEC 30 to the STEC 3100.
Okay.
the installation cost would have been your shop rate times probably 40 to 50 hours. And
Okay.
then any cost to completely redo your panel and add other instruments would have been in addition to that. So you probably would have been looking at 15 to 18,000 for your upgrade, plus whatever was needed for the rest of your panel and installs.
Okay, I need to look back through that and see
If your
what's going
estimate
on.
looks something like that, and I can see a couple of other people chiming in that are running up with similar estimates. If your estimate looks about like that, that should be about right. And then you should have an extra year of warranty. There should be no charges for overhauling your or replacing your existing servos
Servos. Okay.
as part of the group buy special because you put in your order before the STC issued.
So the autopilot itself would be $10,000 then.
For coming, actually, it should be just over that because you're coming from a 30. And did you have, and if for those that have auto trim, great. And for those that didn't have auto trim, there's a little bit of extra money to get your trim servo in that cost.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And there's enough people who are doing upgrades from S-Techs that I'm happy to put that in here. For Garmin said, although they were responsive to us and started doing STCs, they have been very unresponsive to, hey, do you want to do a group buy special? So Garmin is big and they're being Garmin. The Trio, however, in addition to the kind of terrific group buy special that they did for us, and I do have one last screen share to do to show what that was, because they've done a group buy special number 2. So that's going on right now for those of you who didn't get in group buy special 1. It's not quite as good, but it is pretty, it's still nothing to sneeze at all. So I'm going to once again do a share screen. And then, so here was the group buy special that we did with the Trio Pro Pilot. Retail was about 7,000. If enough of us came in, price dropped down to 5,800. That closed December 1st, but because there were still a lot of demand and because they were still working on some of the stuff and because the Comanche community came together, and I just want to briefly list the critical people without whom this project simply would not have happened. And some of them are kind of household names in the Comanche world, some of them less so. Hans Neubert, FAADER and twin driver and twin efficiency expert, who's presented on a couple of Zooms. Hans normally does this kind of consulting for a living, and he consults to the STC group, but he, for free, provided the design that he would approve up ahead of time just to try to help the project get rolling, and advised us. Zach Grant, there is nobody on the planet that I know of that knows airframes, just what they all look like inside, what they look like inside when the electric trim's operating versus when the Johnson bar flaps are operating. And he provided that knowledge to us just to help the project go forward and identified that this would need to be a capstan project. A not very well known name, George Alston. George has 2 twin Comanches, over 100 STCs to his name, including having been recruited to do the Chilton autopilot in the twin Comanche, which was acquired by S-Tech. And George, again, identified the capstan and sent them sketches and just did it to help the Comanches. Greg Peel is a mechanical engineer who had done the design for the P-28s for the Trio Pro Pilot. And although Greg is a mechanical engineer and normally gets paid, he again donated or said, I'm going to just give you my labor and do the sketches, which was the big thing that was slowing them down in getting these STCs done. And so he took an entire 10 days off from his business, which is a busy business, and just flew with me out to the West Coast to help get the installs done, designed servo brackets and did their drawings. And they, the commitment was, yes, if this project goes forward and there's money made, that will cover your expenses later on. But he just took a risk and gave his time and his materials and his labor up front. Marty Hench came in late when we had some serious delays due to an avionics install that went wrong. Marty's 250 was magically made available, and Marty, who's an engineer for NASA, just dove in there and over the weekend started removing and installing stuff to help the autopilot project move forward. This kind of Comanche community group effort pulled that project in by a year. And because we were able to bring in our experts, the resulting installation is so finely tuned to be the same across every single model of Comanche and to be as simple to install as possible that the install time is expected to be under 30 hours for an experienced installer. Now that's helped by the fact that the Trio Pro Pilot is more self-contained because it came out of the experimental, and it neither requires nor can it take advantage of some of the really complex integration that the S-Techs and Garmin's can do. So there are things that the Garmin's and the S-Techs can do that the Pro Pilot can't. But for an autopilot that is perfectly capable of flying a GPS coupled approach, doing altitude intercepts and having a 180 get me the hell out of here button, it is a very capable, very smooth autopilot, and it is going to be available at less than half the cost of many of the other installed autopilots. And so this is something that makes us just more valuable as a fleet. So I just wanted to, again, congratulate the Comanche community. If we hadn't come together this way, this project would not exist. The last thing I'm going to say is that the group buy special that they reiterated instead of 7,000 until the STC issues, although you can't get the really great 5,800 price, they will still make the $6,000 price available. So that group buy special is going on now. A couple of upcoming group buy specials. Anybody want to comment or make any suggestions or comments? Eric is reiterating that Garmin does not give discounts, but we'll figure something out.
I have a little comment.
Yes, please.
I was wondering if anybody has looked at, a little bit off subject, but the UAvionics AV300 little drop-in instruments that are based on like a glass cockpit kind of thing, and you can, and they're not approved for twin engine airplanes yet, and I wondered if we could like maybe lean on those guys to look at the twin engine Comanche market and maybe push them a little bit. It's in the if you want a complete description, it's in the Piper Flyer February 2021 magazine. You got a write-up on them. They look pretty nice, and for people like me that kind of don't want to strip all my avionics and stuff, because I've got such a museum. It crosses all the eras of avionics in my panel. It's kind of like an exhibit. But anyway, these are pretty good, and apparently their dimensions are like, looking at the dimensions here, they only stick into the void spot behind your panel just under 3 inches, and they're just little flat screen mimic type units for your existing.
I had the opportunity to talk to UAvionics. Sorry, I didn't mean to stand on you, Rob. I had the ability to, the privilege, sorry, of talking to UAvionics about a month ago. Back when I thought there might be a twin Comanche coming to the fleet, and they do have plans for the PA30, but it's not at the top of their list. But they've been overwhelmed by the support from the PA24, and they're really happy with it. It's a real shame that they're not certified for IFR, but to replace the standard attitude indicator, they're a very, very, very light and reliable system that really does have some really fantastic benefits. It's just not quite as powerful as a Garmin.
Yep. So UAvionics actually, although I didn't put it here, one of the other very successful group buy specials was the UAvionics Sky Beacon and Tail Beacon. When we needed ADS-B compliance, And again, I want to give credit to Andy Davey in particular, and then to Tim Poole, who did the second UAvionics group buy, and that discount was something like 25%. Instead of $2,000 or $1,950, we were able to purchase, Comanche drivers were able to purchase them for $1,500 and $1,550. The used value, the value in the used market is still better than what we purchased these units for. So both Dynon and UAvionics are on the radar. The cool thing is that UAvionics, unless they've changed their distribution network, we can work with their preferred dealers. And so again, keep putting your interest in there because it'll help us figure out how to focus and what to say when we go talk to them. So these are good questions and they're right on target. I'm just checking my notes. All right, so Aero LEDs, the Genesis STEC 3100 and the Trio Pro Pilot as current group buys. At least that brings us into what's coming up. So we've mentioned Dynon, we've mentioned, so Dynon, we've connected, we connected with Dynon actually at Oshkosh in 2018. And what they said at that time was the same thing that Surefly said. And of course, Surefly later on came back and said, yeah, we'd love to do a group buy. And by the way, Surefly is another group buy that's upcoming. They just got the twin engines approved. So we're going to go back to them and say, hey, can we do this again? They gave us a great group buy. And at the time, some of the people that I've already mentioned who seem determined to make sure nothing ever happens for Comanches, sent a lawsuit threat over saying, if you say anything to anybody ever, we're going to sue you. And so the Surefly didn't get the visibility that that it deserved. But you may have heard Jason Hutchinson, their general manager, come and give a ComancheZOOM, and he is supportive of our type. So expect another Surefly group buy special to be coming. Electro Air with their electronic ignition. They're actually looking forward to doing another one with us. And they said that they have some really exciting news that they will announce as soon as the FAA comes back and says yes. So they've gone in, they've applied for approval. They're being a little bit closed-mouthed about what it is, but it might just possibly have something to do with all those people who have been wondering if it's possible to replace both magnetos. Might or might not. And there's also some interesting stuff in the works related to leaded versus unleaded fuels. So stay tuned. To Rick-B's question, and sorry, sometimes I'm seeing this, sometimes I'm not. Does Surefly offer similar performance to Electro Air? Not yes and no, not really. What they both do is variable advanced timing. Because possibly because of the fact that there is not this extra ignition coil and this incredibly long and strong spark. In general, we're not seeing the same fuel burn improvements with the Surefly as we are in the Electro Air. Does that answer your question? The breakdown is if you're flying 75 hours, okay, cool, right. If you're flying 75 hours or more, in general, I suggest you look at the Electro electronic ignition system. It is a longer and more complicated install. And so it takes a long time to get those, you know, it takes a while to get to the point where you've saved so much in fuel burn that you actually have paid for your Electro electronic ignition install and it's paying you back. Both of these systems basically remove magneto maintenance. The Surefly is certified for, I think it's 2,000 or 2,200 hours. And Jim saw your message. And the Electro Air system, although they mention something like 2,200 or 2,500 hours, I know of people who have gone through an engine replacement and still have their original Electro Air electronic ignition. They're very long lived.
DJ,
go ahead.
Could I make a little comment?
Yes,
Jim
please.
Barry here. I'm calling from Melbourne, Australia. I have fitted a Surefly to my Comanche, and I did a little in-flight test just for comparison.
Oh, brilliant.
And trimmed, flying at about 7,000 feet, trimmed to fly straight and level at 7,000 feet. With all, I've actually got a sheet here, but I can't show it to you at the moment. What happened when I turned off the magneto? The exhaust gas temperatures all rose about 70 degrees, and the plane began to descend about 100 feet a minute.
Oh my.
When I turned the magneto back on, when I went back straight and level and then turned off the Surefly, the exhaust gas temperatures went up 170 degrees, 70 degrees on the Surefly, 170 on the magneto, and then the plane began descending at about 500 feet a minute. This just showed to me just what a better job of lighting the fire the Surefly did.
That is a brilliant report. Jim, thank you for bringing that. Those kinds of numbers are worth writing up and sharing.
Perhaps I can email you that little sheet.
I would love that. I mean, something like that, everybody should know about. Did you see any changes in your fuel burn over your previous numbers, Jim?
Sorry, say again?
Did you see any changes in your fuel burn over your previous numbers?
Oh, look, this is a carbureted engine, but at height, when the manifold pressure is down, I run lean at peak, and I can get it running quite reasonably at 9,000 feet on 44 litres an hour. This is a 250.
Hang on one second. I'm going to text Corey. Hang on.
Gotcha. Thanks, Jim. Just a bit of a caution, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but we've been told that even with the electronic ignition systems, we can run our fuel injected engines lean of peak, but to be cautious about the carbureted engines going lean of peak.
Okay. Just another comment. What we're doing is running the richest cylinder about 50 degrees lean of peak. So there's a couple slightly lean of peak, a couple somewhere around about peak, and a couple probably a little bit richer peak. But with a manifold pressure of 22 inches, you're not going to get into trouble. I certainly wouldn't do it with a high manifold pressure.
Jim, thanks for the clarification. Probably the rest of us out of trouble. Go ahead, Adam.
If I may ask, in the event, if you've replaced both magnetos with an electrical ignition system, in the event of a total electrical failure of the aircraft, what happens?
That's not you can't do that right now. There's no legally approved dual mag replacement.
Is that
why? Yep, that's exactly why.
Because I was reading a story about a Bonanza which had a total electrical failure about 400 foot after takeoff, and he was able to fly the whole flight still on his magneto. So when you mentioned that there was going to be a dual replacement, I was sitting there going, I wonder what would happen in the event of it, because obviously in avionics, if you lose your electrics, you've got a battery that lasts about 2 hours. But in the, what goes on with the EIS system?
Yep.
One quick comment on that. I also have an RV7, and in the home built areas, Lightspeed Engineering, which run off the ship's power, have a system where you have a small backup battery, and should the whole, which is fed with a diode off the normal electrical system, which means it's always charged, should you have an electrical failure, just throw a switch and bring this backup battery into play. And I think that's what you'll find these other people are going to do.
Yeah, cool. For those considering the Surefly and Electro electronic ignition systems, and this just came up yesterday, and for those doing the Lycoming mag replacement, if you would like to make your key switch go away, the Electro Air switch will work with both the Surefly and the Lycoming magneto replacements. And the reason that can be helpful is that some people have reported a jarring hiccup with the engine when they're switching from the Surefly mag to the regular mag, and you can put in the key replacement push switch from Electro Air, and they actually, there is a discount, a group buy, if you will, of I think it's $242 to us Comanche drivers to get that key replacement switch that you can put in that'll work with your Surefly or Lycoming ignition.
These are the switches.
Oh, well done, Adam. And can you raise that just a little bit, because then we can see the type. Yep, the EA 1500 ignition switch.
And there's the 1300 as well.
Good deal.
It should have the prices on there. I can't see what I'm doing. Hang on.
Yep, they're showing us 269, and the price that I just did this for an owner yesterday, and they'll do it for $242.
I was about to ask that because the 180 I flew in the UK had those switches and I like them.
Yep. And Chris Burnley, if you want to unmute and just give people a heads up about this. Chris actually had just installed a SureFly mag replacement and he had a failure. Chris, do you want to just quickly jump in and say how they handled that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's a phenomenal device. You know, I've got a 260B with fuel injection, so obviously it starts much smoother, it runs incredibly smooth. I feel like I'm getting a little bit better gas mileage, and I definitely feel an increase in power. But I was flying back home from somewhere, and it quit just middle of the flight. And I mean, you could instantly, at first I thought maybe I was having an engine failure, so my heart started racing, but it kept running, and I got to the airport, and I landed, and at first I didn't know what was going on. I was close, so I just put it on the ground, and going through the mag check, it's, you know, it's completely dead on the electronic mag. So my mechanic came and picked it up, took it back, and they're replacing it now. It was no problem replacing the mag. They said, we'll send you a new one, but it was a little shocking. So I was kind of glad to have that old traditional points-based style mag sitting there on my left side to get me home.
Did it run a lot rougher when you were just on one mag, Chris?
Yes, I don't know if it's, I was trying to determine whether it was my perception or whether there's something changed, because when I was running just two mags, it seemed smoother. But then when I got the SureFly, it feels so smooth. It almost feels like you're in a Honda or something, where you can't even feel the engine when you're idling. It's that good. And so when you switch it off and you go just to your regular mag, I mean, it feels like the engine's missing almost, even though it's not. And I even asked my mechanic, I said, hey, what's going on? Is the timing set right on this? And we checked it, it was fine. So I think it's just because it's so much smoother when you're not using it, you really notice the difference. At least that's my perception.
Brilliant. And the Electro guys mentioned that for those who have fuel injected engines, that gamies plus Electro is a wonderful combination. And I'm assuming that would go for SureFly as well. It doesn't help those of us flying carbureted engines, but it's good to know. So upcoming group buys. I've mentioned that Electro has some new stuff, and at that point, they're going to come in and be pretty aggressive about working with us. Jason and I have been misconnecting, more my fault than his. That's SureFly's GM. We have a paint shop that's going to be doing a ComancheZOOM. And how many of you would have expected that a paint shop would be willing to do a group buy special?
You have my attention.
You have my attention also.
Yep. I thought, no way. But it turns out that paint shops have a big inefficiency that we can help them with as a group of Comanche owners. And this came when I was working on a ComancheZOOM for paint. And they said, yeah, actually, they said, one of the biggest problems we have is when somebody schedules and then they don't show up, or they show up really late. And I said, so wait, you could give us a big group buy discount if we organized a group of owners and made sure we showed up on time? Because I'm thinking to myself, how many people do I know that are willing to ferry somebody else's airplane if somebody gets busy or whatever? And so in short, I'm not guaranteeing this is going to happen all over the country, but we're going to try. We're going to try to organize group buys for key paint shops. And this one's complicated because you don't want to send us to a bad paint shop, right? That would be horrible if we did a group buy special and the paint shop job wasn't great. but we're going to try to identify and help organize groups of Comanches that will show up 1, 2, 3. And Jim, yes, I can. I'm thinking about, I'm gonna have to run over and get my iPhone, which was dead when I started. But it's a Florida-based paint shop, and somebody who's started doing it in high school and has a good rep. So the big thing is, it turns out that if we can, for paint shops that are on the smaller side, but that are quality vendors, they've got to keep crews of people busy. And when somebody doesn't show up and there's a dead spot, there's a big inefficiency. So if it's just kind of like with the prop balancing clinic, if we can organize groups of Comanches that say, I need paint, I want paint, and for a discount, I'm willing to make sure my airplane shows up on time, whether it's me getting it there. And we can organize as owners to help ferry airplanes out, you know, like I'll bring my airplane over and then you help me bring your airplane over, and we just coordinate, right? And all of a sudden the paint shop is fully occupied, their schedule just smoothly clicks along, and there's not a big inefficiency because there's not a lot of people sitting around with downtime. And that, oddly enough, was how it turned out we can get a discounted group buy special on paint. Cool, huh? So let's see, what else? This is the most important one. Well, okay, before I get to the most important one, air conditioning. We have 2 Comanche owners. Now, everybody's probably heard, everybody that flies in the southern climate has probably heard of the air coolers, where they're like an ice chest with a little fan in it, and you can cut a hole in your hat rack, or if you have a 260 B or C, it sits in the back and blows cold air at you, and you have to keep filling it with ice and water. Those are the ones you can buy, the portable air conditioning units. Well, we have 2 Comanche drivers who've been working on electrically driven air conditioning units that will tie into your battery system and pump cold air into your Comanche. They're smaller, they're efficient, and those are Chris Cotton and Jeff Munford. Chris in the Houston area, Jeff Munford in the South Florida area. You can imagine why they started working on these. So expect group buy specials coming up with those, and that'll help both some of our own with their investments of time and effort, and get us a great a great system. And just want to make a point, because most of us are male, just being honest. 5 to 7% of pilots are females. Quite a few people have mentioned to me that one of the reasons that their partners might not be so keen to fly with them in the summer months is because it gets really hot in a Comanche on the ground. And so this is your solution. And you can justify your investment. It'll make everybody more comfortable, and your kids if you have kids. So expect a ComancheZOOM from Jeff and Chris, and then expect a group buy special. On to insurance. This 2 or 3. So, well, let me just stop for a second and say, any comments or suggestions or questions? Okay. Insurance. This one is difficult. A couple of years ago, a very, very eminent Comanche driver said to me, CJ, there's something wrong with the insurance industry. I've checked them all, and the ones that should be giving Comanches the best rates aren't. Go negotiate a group buy special for Comanches on insurance. And then the 737 MAX 8 disasters happened, and the Kobe Bryant crash and everything else, and the insurance market went nuts. And so what I can say right now is we took, well, this is a little bit of a presentation all by itself, but in short, the insurance industry went nuts because it's a tiny segment of a massive industry. General aviation is lumped into the same group as commercial aviation. Believe it or not, we are not a distinct group from United Airlines and American Airlines, and even from Lion Air off the coast of Africa. So, or on the coast of Africa. So when bad things happen in aviation insurance, believe it or not, it even affects us, even if it's in the commercial side. That said, they still do pay attention to accident rates in individual types of twins, individual types of singles. And so I started to work with a couple of people, again, including Al Murray, who you heard about from Shoulder Harnesses, and a few others that had good connections into the big thing is to reach the underwriters. We have insurance agents, like Adam Haidt mentioned early on, David Asman, and Dwight Quoom presented to us all on insurance in an earlier ComancheZOOM. And it's 9:04, so I'll try to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes. And then just open the floor for any questions or suggestions. But the big thing was to try to reach the underwriters, and the underwriters are difficult to reach. So what we were able to do was reach very, very senior insurance agents who had good relationships with the underwriters. And what we were trying to find out is how different underwriters look at the general aviation insurance market in general, and then subtypes like Comanches and Moonies in particular. And what we discovered is that there are 3 underwriters that actually are really sensitive to statistics. And this was helpful because the Comanche safety study showed that Comanche drivers are responsive to type training. And then we were able to look at the overall industry with the help of some fine people from AOPA and their statistician who have been doing the NAL report. And we discovered that the accident claims in general aviation break down almost evenly. This is surprising because we're used to thinking of a crash as being an expensive event for an aviation company, for an aviation insurance company. And it is, if there are fatalities, especially if, you know, if it's like everybody doesn't die and there are survivors or there's families, crashes and fatalities are expensive events. The really expensive events for aviation insurance companies are when a tornado goes through and knocks down all the hangars at an airport, and there's just a massive loss, or a hurricane goes through and floods and they have to cut up 73 airplanes, including new expensive $1 million airplanes. What that meant is that we could break the problem of becoming an incredibly attractive group to insure down into 2 types of solutions. We could educate 3 in a way. We could educate the pilots so that we were better pilots and less likely to have the 3 most common types of accidents the Comanche people have. So we broke this down and ran the numbers. And I have been the ICS safety committee chair. So I had been updating the safety study. And so I was like, okay, we have, all airplanes have large numbers of fuel mismanagement problems, but we Comanche drivers, for better or for worse, we have greater numbers of fuel mismanagement problems unless we do recurrent type training. And for some reason, if we do recurrent type training, we have fewer fuel mismanagement problems. We pay attention to fueling our tanks. We pay attention to timing our tanks. We know to not trust our gauges in certain situations. And we know that we can get into trouble even with fuel sender units and electronic EIS and JPI monitoring systems. So we're more knowledgeable, we're more watchful, we get into less trouble if we get training. So fuel mismanagement, instructional flights, and certain types of flight into weather are our key bugaboo areas. And it turns out that training addresses all 3 a lot, like reduces them by 60 or 70%. When the training was removed, those accident rates rebounded. So we had a pretty good argument that if our cohort of people that wanted an insurance discount took recurrent type training of a certain type, we were going to be statistically less likely to have very common types of accidents. So you could put a good statistical argument together where we could reduce our claims by at least 30%. The second big area was this area of acts of nature. It turns out that if you break down acts of nature and insurance claims in aircraft, we have an enormous number of damage claims related to named windstorms like hurricanes where you know they're coming. And it turns out, and I'd love to know how many people actually knew that this was a possibility on your insurance policy. Many insurance policies will pay you up to $500 in fuel costs to move your airplane 100 miles away from the path of a named windstorm. Now, I would say, I think 60 to 70% of the policies that I've learned about have that rider in. How many of you knew that your insurance company would pay you to move your airplane out of the path of a named windstorm? Rob's like, yeah, me. Check your policy. Many of these will. So as an aside, we've been working hard on software to, to like be more cool and help us find each other. And in a future ComancheZOOM, we've got some really, really cool map software that's almost ready to demonstrate. And we geocoded Comanche drivers. We can geocode the entire FAA database. And that means we can find clusters of Comanches and we can help Comanche drivers connect with other people who can qualify under your open pilot clause. That means we can buddy you up with another pilot who can help you move your airplane out of harm's way should a named windstorm or flood event that's somewhat predictable but is nonetheless an act of nature be coming your way. And so what we proposed, so what happened when the insurance industry went crazy is that the companies said, we are really, really interested in working with you to create a cohort of pilots that are easy to insure. But the industry's gone crazy and the agent said, we are literally getting underwriter changes on a daily basis on who I can write in for what numbers. And for those who've been monitoring, the insurance rates went up. Older pilots suddenly couldn't get insurance at all. People were having their rates double. And now we're just starting to get the first reports of people whose rates are actually decreasing. So it looks like things are starting to settle down, and the agents who are like 20-year agents, 30-year agents said the industry goes in cycles and we're expecting in a year. Jim, you're right. Yeah, it's time for congressional engagement because these Comanches and other aircraft like us are key small business enablers and rural business enablers. And now that we're in the era of COVID and general aviation starts are exceeding commercial starts, general aviation has a new importance for all countries, but certainly for the United States. So Jim's right. I think that it's time to start making this a political issue. As much as I hate to say it, as well as just an operational safety and efficiency issue. But anyway, so the proposal to the insurance companies, which they liked and said, expect movement on this in about a year when things settle down, was we will commit that we'll train our pilots, we'll commit that will train our mechanics or get our Comanches exposed to mechanics who understand our landing gear, because our gear is electromechanical and most other aircraft like us are hydraulic. Now, the original safety study that looked at the 82 to 92 statistics and was done by Bruce Lansdowne, the AOPA Air Safety Foundation then chair, found that, and everybody should be pricking their ears up right now, how many of you have heard that Comanche landing gear is less reliable than Bonanza or other hydraulic gears? The reality is that that safety study found that the Comanche landing gear, the electromechanical gear, was actually slightly less likely. Yes, Tim Horton's right, only if not maintained, is actually less likely to have issues. Not a lot less likely because they're all pretty good than the hydraulic gear. Part of it is its failure mode. If you think about it, Comanche landing gear is designed to just fall down, right? If you release the transmission, and not fall down, but come down, and it won't be quite as sturdy and locked because the transmission's disengaged. But it's failure mode, gravity helps you to get it down. So as long as it's maintained properly, the system is a very simple and remarkably robust gear. But if, as Tim said, if not properly maintained, yes, Eric's asking the right question. How many are gear failures versus pilot failures? And Matt Kirk, who's going to be doing a ComancheZOOM soon with Hans Newbert on pet peeves and gear maintenance, was talking to me about his ComancheZOOM the other day as we were practicing and making sure he was comfortable with the tool. And he said, CJ, I want somebody to pay me and go see every time the gear gets blamed for having a problem, because he said, I can tell whether there was a pilot failure or a gear failure every time. In any case, we have both issues. We forget to put our gear down, or we don't understand how to troubleshoot it. And sometimes our mechanics don't know how to adjust squat switches or what have you properly, or they'll pencil whip 1,000-hour gear AD. Don't do that. Get Matt Kirk's video, get Hans Newbert's DVD, and then help your mechanic do the 1,000-hour gear AD DVD. Gear AD. I just went through it with the 180 at Zach Grant's hangar, and I was, sort of terrified. And it's detail oriented, but it's not bad. Go help your mechanic and learn. So back to the insurance group buy. What we proposed to them was this: we're going to do three things. We're going to train our pilots. We're going to do a basic, gear inspection. We're going to hangar or cover our airplanes, because theft and hail damage that then ruins all your avionics because it punches through your windscreen and it gets wet, and flood and named windstorm events are all assisted by hangar cover. And then we'll buddy our cohort up with people who will help move the airplane in the event of a named windstorm or flood. And by doing those things, we should be able to reduce our claims by on the order of 40 to 70%. And they said, we like it. Send us the proposal. We would normally try to get back to you quickly. As it is, we're going to get back to you in a year. So any suggestions or comments on the insurance proposal?
What's the difference, and how big is the difference between age and malfunction in gear? In other words, if they look at you cross-eyed, you're too old.
So Ray, you're right on. So this is getting to the point that if you are 75 and older, it's getting harder to get insurance. Is that right?
Oh my God, yes.
Yep.
And it's
Okay.
typical. And they doubled the rate.
Yep.
I mean, I'm going to self-insure.
Yes. So this leads me to the very last point on my notes. I'm going to back up for just a second. At Sun and Fun, they had the head of AOPA, the head of EAA, and the head of Sun and Fun, the chairman and CEO of Sun and Fun, all on the stage in the GA Town meeting. And I just want to thank everybody that was at ComancheTown, because we packed the tent just to show that GA was really interested in our future. That is recorded, and it's on, if you search for SNF Radio, you'll be able to go to their YouTube channel. And anyways, in there, one of the first questions that came up was the question Ray Fay just asked, which is, we have a ton of older pilots who are having trouble getting insurance. What do we do about them? And initially, Mark Baker of AOPA was like, oh yeah, we're working on something for older pilots, only it just came out. And he's dealing with pilots up to 75 years of age. But I personally know a ton of very capable active pilots who are 75 and older, including my father, who's going to be turning 80 in February 26th, actually, this month. And he's still a very active pilot, and his rates basically doubled, and he went to liability only. I also heard from a pilot that has 3,000 hours in a Comanche and maybe 100 and something in a tail dragger that he also owns, his Champ, and he could get insurance in his Champ, and they didn't want to write him in his Comanche, even though the guy is like, runs an entire airport. And
Go
ahead.
That seems backwards to me. I think a tail dragger would be a little more accident prone.
You would think, and he has 10 times as many hours in the Comanche.
Yeah, it's weird. I was just wondering if there's any correlation between the FAA Wings program and maybe, I've never seen it, but I wonder if that could be written into an insurance policy as some sort of continuous training and improvement for people that are older.
Yes. So Bob, Rob, that's right on. So the FAA FAST team, first of all, I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you're here regularly, you'll notice there are 6 or 7 people from the FAST team reps that are typically in any ComancheZOOM. And the FAA has been giving a lot of support to this. We have Margie Leggett, who's working with her FAST team safety expert, Dave, oh gosh, Pete Morse is going to know his name off the top of his head, who is going to be trying to come in and give us a presentation. We proposed to them a series of topics for which we could for which we could select a bunch of wings, half-hour sessions. And they were to address the key areas the Comanches have issues. So kind of like the mini clinics had that list of topics, it's the same list of topics. So the FAA is going to be working with us to create a at your own pace, go take these programs, series of wing seminars that address our key areas, like forgetting to put our gear down or managing our fuel.
That's great. You know, having taken more check rides than I really care to. I certainly don't want to relive, but you know, I just want to say to the guys out there that if you haven't been in professional aviation and you haven't been like challenged by check rides every 6 months and every year and it's different than when you go for a rating. It's if you get in your airplane with an instructor who's not, you know, gonna give you a Santa Claus biannual, or they don't call them biannuals, or you know what I mean, anything like that. It's actually quite enjoyable to be challenged, and it's not something to have anxiety about, because generally speaking, when I fly with some older gentlemen and older than me even, and you know, there's an understanding generally that if you've been doing this for, you know, 40 years, you're probably doing more things right than wrong, because I'm talking to you. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I'm still kind of active as a flight instructor, and for people that have only taken one check ride in their whole life or whatever, and have fear of having another pilot sitting in the airplane, it's not that bad once you've made that initial hurdle and put all those air miles, you know, in your logbook. So just wanted to chime in and say that.
And we as senior pilots that have been flying for a long time, like you just said, Rob, 40 hours or 40 years. I've been in Comanche Association 40 years. You know, my number is 840.
Wow.
You know, and I've taken so many check rides and so many. We should get some kind of, hey, we know you're trying to do this safe.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And I think most of the guys I know, you know, you would fly with, you know, would give you some kind of credit. So anybody out there that's kind of dicey about the wings program, or maybe not just having a flight review once every 2 years, it's not a bad investment. And when you do reapply for your insurance, even though it's not something on the form, you might call up your broker and say, hey, you know, I've done this, and this is my recurrency in my logbook. What can you do for me? And if they don't want to negotiate, you know, call somebody else, because, you know, it does raise a red flag to me as a flight instructor when I fly with somebody who, you know, flies 10 hours a year, and in 2 years he or she comes up to me and says, hey, my flight review is expired. Okay, well, and they say, well, can we do it tomorrow? Because I'm going to go from Los Angeles to Boise, Idaho in my Cherokee 6, and I'm going to take my whole family. And I go, well, you know, even though the FAR say you're only required to log the time in your logbook that is required to prove your currency, put down everything you can put down in your logbook and get out and fly with maybe a pilot that has some more advanced ratings, or a CFI that you trust is going to be honest with you and give you an honest evaluation. That's all.
But I just want to emphasize, Rob, that's right on. We started on the Northeast fly-ins, and just to be clear, we created a fly share program. And what we didn't expect, initially we did it because sometimes it's cheaper to fly together, or it's nice to have company, or if your airplane's down for maintenance or annual, you know, you just jump into somebody else's Comanche and go. What we didn't expect was exactly what Rob Whiteley just said would happen. Pilots started teaching each other. and watching each other and learning from each other.
Yeah, you bet. And hey, CJ, before we quit, I just want to tell you, and I'm sure all these guys listening right now, absolutely appreciate every single thing you do for this group and what you try to do and continue to do. And I love you with all my heart.
Oh, Ray, right back at you. Many of you don't know that Ray ran the Oshkosh tent and slept in it to keep that open. So thank you, Ray, for all you've done for all of us.
I have a suggestion. Is there a checked out list provided by Comanche instructors as to what would be a good, and pass that around to the people so that they will have some kind of a guideline as to what the kinds of things that will be most useful for them or that they should concentrate on?
Bill, that is a great idea. So you're thinking like a cheat sheet for instructors that maybe don't do a lot of instructing in Comanches?
Well, what I was thinking really is that if two pilots fly together and they have this checklist or this kind of thing, have you done this? I'm so used to them in doing in other businesses, okay, that if you have it and it's in the airplane as part of the airplane gear, it'll at least keep you thinking of the points that are really interested because are really concerned, because those are the points that have been documented statistically where the problems are.
Right. Oh,
Hey, CJ, if I can, just a second. So Alan Cheek here down in Peachtree City. So I've been teaching a fellow airline guy. He's retired also, but bought a 58 Comanche last summer, 250 model. And a bit, once we got it all maintenance fixed and then he had a whole avionics panel redone anyway. So I've been teaching him to fly it for the last 4 or 5 months or so. And again, I'm not a certified CFI, although I did teach in the Navy, kind of under their advanced jet syllabus and stuff. So, I know what I know, and I've been in my Comanche for 30 years and, I've got 1,700 hours in it. So, but, it got me thinking the other day in that.
I now give you a blessing as a guy who can train somebody in a Comanche.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Based on your qualifications.
Yeah, so it's just, and he's doing a great job. But again, here's a guy that used to fly 767s and international pilot with American Airlines. And let me just tell you, his first couple of, a lot of landings in a Comanche would be a Charlie Foxtrot, because he's trying to fly it like a 7.6. And, so I'm, having to break him of this habit and that habit and stuff, but he's coming along. In fact, I just kind of cut him solo today because he's actually got to take the airplane to Webco in 2 weeks for an annual. So, but it got me thinking, one day I was just sitting there kind of having a cocktail and I was going, again, I'm not a formal CFI, but I said, it really would be a nice, like we didn't do steep turns or stalls or anything like that, but it would be nice to have a list of, what Comanche CFIs would like to sit there and, show students or whatever, or fellow pilots, I guess I should say, hey, if you're getting ready to do a BFR, hey, here's what you ought to practice, or stuff like that. So, I had to get him all up to speed on a Garmin 375, even though I spent one weekend, I have a 480 in my airplane. So I just pulled up the manual and the simulator button and figured it out myself over a weekend and, taught him how to do that, plus coupled approaches, plus, and again, a lot of air work as far as in the landing pattern and fuel management and stuff like that. And so, but it would be nice to have some sort of list of, hey, if you're teaching somebody in a Comanche, you need to go over these points,
Right. Yeah. That's brilliant because we've got a great resource here with the guys that I'm looking at and the experience in the specific airplane. And there's probably I'm not a big high time Comanche guy, but I've flown a lot of Piper, like chieftains and Navajos and all that. So there's a lot of there that's pretty
Sure.
solid.
Oh, absolutely.
But the thing we have here is this whole contingent I'm looking at with, I don't know how many thousands of hours that would add up to of experience. Every airplane has its little quirks, you know. I think one of the things that I found particularly quirky was the emergency gear extension system with the a big old thing that looks like it belongs in a trolley car. You stick it in the hole and you move it here, and if it doesn't go there, you grab the other hole and you shove it forward and all that stuff. I mean, I'm like, that was something that I'd never encountered. It's always been a nitrogen bottle blowdown or a crank under the seat of a Cessna, and
Right.
the trolley car handle was quite a surprise. So yeah, I think if anybody, I don't know if we can get some kind of a group effort here and, you know, say like what I just shared with you, that okay, Rob or whoever, in my Comanche, whatever, I found this was a quirk, or this was something that a pilot may not know, because it's something that comes up. So, well, we're all victims of the reliability of our airplanes, because unless you're an airline guy like you are, you don't get in a simulator and, you know, do all these horrible things to, you know.
And they were horrible.
Right. Yeah, they are. And so we tend to kind of be a victim of our own reliability when it comes to flying smaller airplanes, because, you know, you don't want an event to be an adventure. But we've got a great data source here with everybody here that share those little quirks, and maybe we could put together a little mini syllabus or a rubric of, in this model Comanche, you know, the left-handed pilot can't reach the right-handed switch or whatever, you know, stuff like that.
You know, Bill Kniff, I think, started this thread, and I think everybody's jumping on like, yes, this is correct. What I'm wondering is, could we put a second ComancheZOOM together to pull together flight experiences of, you know, longtime instructors like George Merriam, who's on sometimes, who's been teaching for 50 years. I know Zach Grant and Kristen Winter and Dennis Crew and George Richmond, who are 4 of the most experienced instructors in all types of Comanches in the world. I've talked to them a little bit about this, and their hesitation is getting involved with giving advice, of course, but I can tell you that if we group sourced, you know, if we said to everybody, hey, what would your tip be for, oh good, George Merriam is here. What would your tip be for teaching in a Comanche? You know, and the big thing, just to back up a little bit, is this is what I heard from the people who taught more people in more different types of Comanches than anybody, I think anybody in the world. They said, over 60 years, each Comanche has become an individual entity. The placement of instruments, fortunately, our engines have pretty much stayed the same, and our airframes have pretty much stayed the same, and all of our airframes are the same. They never stretched the fuselage. There were very few changes made to hang 2 engines on instead of having one off the nose. But the panels are all over the place. And then, of course, we as pilots are a little all over the place. The trick is to match the instruction to the particular panel and the particular pilot. But that said, we clearly have clusters of accidents. So yes, Tim Horton just posted, don't do the emergency gear extension in the air for training purposes. Yes. That's a big one. And Hank Spellman also has emphasized that a good way to screen whether you've got a knowledgeable Comanche instructor is to ask them whether they would do an emergency gear extension in the air. It's like a trick question.
Yeah, I've read some horror stories about that particular simulation.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I just got yet another message about an instructor and a student who gear upped a Comanche, in this case, a twin. And that is unfortunately, one of the times when we see clusters of gear ups is in instructional situations when people get busy and distracted. And then somehow the checks go wrong. But let's put together a suggestion and then run it by the most experienced instructors, the Zach Grants, the Kristen Winters. I mean, they're not going to say, here's our list for you. But if we come with our list back to them and say, okay, here it is, they're gonna be forced to
Yeah, we can share the liability.
kind of like that, yeah. And when we got somebody like Ray Fay and Bill Kniff on here who have owned and operated their aircraft for 45, 50 years, I mean, we have some people, I'm trying to think of, there's a wonderful gentleman on the left coast who first had a single and now has a twin and has owned them since the longer than I've been alive, which is telling. But, since the early days of the Comanche, the knowledge that Ray, that you have, Bill, that you have, the people who have flown these airplanes for generations would go into these lists, and then we should be able to come out with a pretty good list. The big problem is going to be refining and weaning it so it's a simple list.
And after all these years, every time I get in an airplane with another pilot, I learn something else. Constantly, you're constantly learning if you're paying attention.
Honestly, Ray, I think you've just epitomized the attitude of a safe, competent pilot.
Yeah.
I concur.
Yeah, you try.
I'd like to make one more point. A neighbor of mine who I didn't know what his background was said, hey, I'd like to go flying with you. So we took him up, and while up there, my GPSs went out. But the point I want to make is he was sitting there, and within the first 10 minutes, he had told me that my DG was drifting at 5 degrees in 10 minutes. This is the kind. Now, when I found out what he was, he's the senior check pilot for the 757 and the Air 52, or the Airbus. I mean, we're good friends now. But the point I want to make is that there are people that have real experience with checking other pilots out. And I think that we can get a lot from them to go this. And when we get our checklist or straightened out, we could use that for insurance purposes, that have it signed off, and here it is. And it's the standard. And I think that would be a big move to help us with our insurance premiums. Because I know I was told that I have to get a medical once a year, which doesn't bother me in the least, but it's good. They may find something that I didn't expect. But okay, that's the point I wanted to make, is that people that have the flying experience that sit there, watch what they look for. And you can learn so much from that.
Could I make a comment here?
Please, Jim.
In Australia, we have a pilot's proficiency program, which many Comanche flyers go to. It's an annual event, and we have a gear simulator, and everybody has to go through being thoroughly aware of how to use the gear when you have a gear malfunction, how to get your gear down properly. And if you do that, we have an insurance underwriter over here who will discount your insurance by about $400.
You get it.
Well, the other thing, this is not a paid commercial. I've taken the trouble to fit a knots to you device which interacts with the flaps and the gear. And if you go for your flaps before the gear is down, it yells at you and flashes a red light. I think this is it's a cheap system, and I think it's a big step ahead in preventing you from doing a wheels up.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's nice.
We could probably, if it's not approved and needs to be in the US, we've been collecting information on people who could do that. Do you want to try to get that approved if it isn't already and needs help to be so?
Sorry, could you say that again, CJ, please?
I said, your system that you fitted, I don't know if it's approved or if we have an equivalent in the US, but that's something that we could make available maybe as a group buy special. If it's
It was
not,
a Knots to You thing, which I fitted about 15 years ago.
oh, so it is approved, but the question is
Well,
it still available?
Well, I can't answer that. I've not looked, but
Yeah.
it's the cheapest thing I've ever done on my plane. I think it was under $300, and it took my A&P, I don't know, maybe half a day to fit it.
Jim, when you send the test that you did of SureFly, would you be willing to mention to me that flashing red light as well? And I will,
Yeah,
I've
sure.
got to talk to Matt Kirk anyways, so he may have that available or something equivalent. But if it isn't, because Knots 2 obviously went away and sold some of their stuff.
Yeah.
And I think everything got purchased, but if it's, we'll check. What I'll do is I'll commit to try to work with Matt Kirk of Comanche Gear.
Yep.
To see if we can make sure that's still available, negotiate a group buy, and if it isn't available, at this point, we've been collecting a bunch of resources that might be able to help make it available.
Yeah, well, look,
You can sign
I
me
think
up for
it's a
that one.
no-brainer, actually. It's got a horn and a red light. It flashes the red light at you and blows a horn if you go for your flaps with the gear up.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, if you send me that email, then I'll coordinate with you and we'll make it. So I also just want to say, Jim Peters just mentioned something really important. The triple P training that the Australians pioneered, because Jim, you guys created that landing gear simulator, if I recall.
Yes,
and I
that's
talked to Nigel Wettenhall and I said, how many gear ups have you had since almost everybody that flew a Comanche in Australia started going and doing that? And Nigel told me, and this was a couple of years ago, but I think at the time he either said 0 or 1. It was a huge change.
Huge change.
Unfortunately, in the US, so I started going as part of the insurance group buy, and I was like, hey, if we do this, will you give us, because QB, is it QBE that is your
Yes,
insurer?
that's the one.
Right. So Australia's insurance market for aviation insurance is a bit different in that QBE is your insurer.
Correct.
And in the US, there's a bunch of little ones and some of the right Comanches and some weren't. So we didn't get the same answer from insurers, the same interest and the same response that we did with QBE. So we essentially made the same argument, but we framed it differently when we finally refined like major causes of damage and what we could do to reduce claims. And by the way, the insurers we went to were Avemco, which is both an underwriter and an agency here in the US, and Assured Partners, which is AOPA's old insurance company, with a proposal for what to do. But anyways, but back to what I just wanted to say to Jim and to everybody that the program Jim's talking about, everybody, like literally, I think it was like 80% of pilots that have Comanches in Australia have gone and made like an annual party.
Yeah, we have a great time.
Yeah. And they've been holding this for like 14 or 15 years. And some people have gone to all 14 or 15 of them. I mean, have you really? Oh, brilliant. So it is an incredible program. And if we can change our culture around the world, if we as Comanche drivers say, this is part of who we are, this kind of practice, this kind of commitment. Vans Air Force, the Vans RV, and Jim, you mentioned you've got an RV7 as well.
Yes.
Vans had one of the highest accident rates early on, and their airplanes were not complicated. And Van Grunsven looked at this and said, why are we having so many accidents? And it turns out that it was partly because it was home built and partly because people were overconfident and they just would finish their airplanes. And after many years of working on them, they go to fly them and their stick and rudder skills weren't very good anymore. And so when they figured that out, Van Grunsven and the group of people that run RV literally made a commitment to try to change the culture. And they went from being a little bit of a cowboy culture to one that's really committed to safety and training. And they decreased their accident rates so much that in 2019, Van Grunsven received an award for having the fatality rates in RVs while doubling the number of RV aircraft out there from 5,000 to 10,000. That's a 75% reduction in fatalities through training and changing the culture. I think that, yeah, that's inspiring. That makes Comanches desirable to insure. So let's make it so.
You know, one thing, CJ, real quick, that the Australian mate mentioned, you know, and he said, hey, you know, we have this gear seminar, but basically it's a big party and guys come in there. And so, you know, before I kind of a light bulb went off and I had a little brainstorm and I thought, you know, what if we had fly-ins over the weekend or something at a cool place, but then not necessarily formally, but, you know, you kind of, you know, say you have a fly in and you know, people fly in on Friday and then, you know, they're staying till Sunday, and then maybe somewhere through Saturday and Sunday, you start mixing and matching pilots, you know, that just not formally or anything, but you just say, you know, hey, Alan, do you mind if I, you know, can I fly with you in your airplane? Yeah, come on, we'll go for an hour flight. And sometimes all a guy needs to do is watch. You know, and then, you know, some you can throw in some instruction or not, or hey, you know, Bob, would you fly with me, you know, in my 260B and just, you know, see what you think, you know, or whatever. Anyways, you could do that. And then Sunday, boom, everybody blast off and go their merry way. But I'm just saying, you, instead of kind of our fly-ins where, you know, people are flying in and then we're all saying hi, having lunch, boom, we all blast out. Well, why not some sort of a weekend thing or a several day thing? Anyways, and then like I say, people fly in, hey, we're drinking ourselves silly on Friday night or whatever, as we should. But then Saturday after breakfast, if you know, hey, why don't you go fly with me? Or hey, come on, you go fly, I'll fly with you or whatever. And you just do a little mix and match and then blast off. And then, you know, hey, I learned something this weekend. And the reason I say that is because in my buddy's 58 Comanche, again, you know, he's got this Garmin 375 that the avionics shop just put in it. So like I say, I had to self-learn this thing, which wasn't too terribly hard. And I have a 480, and I have to admit, I mean, flying his airplane and loading approaches, I actually learned something about my own airplane. Because in a 375, you know, when you pull up the procedure page and you know, pull out a RNAV or whatever, it says, hey, load the approach, but it's not active yet, okay? And so then all of a sudden you have to hit the active button, you know, assuming you're doing vectors, not. And in a Garmin 480, which I absolutely love the unit, but when I load the approach, I get this goofy thing called VTF. And I'm like, huh? I mean, I know what it is. It's vectors to final. But all I've done is load the approach. I don't get the, you know, string out the final bearing until I hit that VTF. So it's like, good Lord, I learned something. And then on a Garmin SL30 Navcom, when my buddy was talking to me about it, and he goes, yeah, you know, you can monitor 2 frequencies on the comm side. And I go, no, you can't. And he goes, yeah, you can. And I go, no, I can do that on my 480, but not, you know, you must be, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I know you're wrong. Well, sure as poop, he was right. I mean, and so again, there's something I learned about my Garmin SL30, and I've had that doggone thing since 2005. And I never knew if you just push the comm button and hold it, you can monitor the standby frequency. So everybody, regardless, and the gentleman made it before, it doesn't matter your age or your experience, man, if you're open up, everybody can learn something.
You know, that's a really good point, because I don't know, Alan, apparently you've flown crew and stuff in the airlines, and a new airline pilot sits in the right seat, or a corporate pilot or whatever, and he gets to watch someone fly the airplane before he becomes the aircraft commander, the pilot in command. When you become a certificated private pilot, you don't get that apprenticeship. You just like, hey, good, yeah, have fun, right? So I think your point's well taken. You know, you guys I love to grab another pilot and fly with them out at the airport, because he can watch me fly and then I can watch him fly. And while I'm watching him fly, I can fuss around with some of the stuff in my my airplane and devote my full attention to, like your experience. What does this button do? Or, in the modern age of this glass cockpit, why is my airplane doing this? You know, on the autopilot, I didn't think it would do
Absolutely.
that, you know, and when you're trying to manage your flight as the aircraft commander, pilot commander, whatever you want to call yourself, you don't have time to check out these nuances in your airplane. You've got to, you know, aviate, navigate, communicate, and then find out why you push that button and you're heading flagged or something, you know. And it's really good to fly with another pilot. And
it's probably more than less. It's switchology, you know. I mean,
right.
you don't
and
you don't have
the
it in
brilliance of it
GPS.
is you don't have that natural tension like you're riding with a CFI or a check pilot or
Right,
something.
right.
You're just riding with another guy, and it's really, really helpful. And I gotta cut out. But the other thing I like to say to my age group and those above is, one thing I've noticed that I have to do now that I never had to do when I was, you know, getting in and out of an airplane, you know, every other day, a charter, a flight instructor, whatever I was doing. I really try to limit my distractions from people and looking up, because that's a cool looking airplane while I'm doing the pre-flight and everything. Because let's all face it, I know I'm not, you know, I used to be able to get into a Gulfstream 1 and just flow the cockpit and fire it up. And the other guy would try to keep up with his checklist, you know, my co-pilot. I don't do that anymore. I'm almost verbatim on everything I do with the checklist, and pace your own flying. If you're trying to go into an airport and you're a little, you know, I don't get this airport layout or something, there's nothing that says, hey, turn the airplane around, burn 5 minutes somewhere out of the airport traffic area, whatever, and figure it out and try it again. I mean, we got to face up to the fact that I cannot process data at 66 as fast as I could at 34 when I was flying an airplane every 2 days. And I think Alan will back me up on that.
And I'm 66 too.
Pardon me?
Don't forget your relief bottle.
Cut that on the coffee too.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest, because it is 9:51.
All right, I'm going.
Well, no, so here's the thing. This discussion for the last hour has revealed just a fantastic idea. Why don't we have a thing next week that we can move. Why don't we reconvene next week? We'll put out a call especially to CFIs and people with a lot of Comanche experience, and anybody who wants to hear from CFIs and a lot of Comanche experience. Let's collect our list of gotchas and Comanches and suggestions. Alan, your idea of doing weekend fly-ins where we connect pilots with each other and people, you know, we do fun locations. So if you're dragging along family, they've got something fun to do. And then we organize and try to do 3 or 4 of these around the country where people fly in together and then fly with each other. And we get hopefully somebody sitting in the back seat, thumb typing notes onto an iPhone that they can provide to both the people in the front seat.
And if there's going to be an Oshkosh this year, try to meet
which there is
there.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, and
with the group. That's a great place to meet.
That is a great idea. But what we can't do at Oshkosh is the limited flight ops. We can't just go and take off out of Oshkosh and fly with each other there. So definitely let's try to meet up. But let's try to find 4 places around the country. Pete Morse and Ron and Lynn Ward are masters at putting fly-ins together, and PJ Medella is becoming a master at putting fly-ins together. And there's a couple other people around the country.
Sarah.
Pardon?
Sarah.
Oh, yes. I have heard about Sarah, and I think Pete
Sarah's
knows.
awesome.
Yes, in the mid-states area.
Yeah.
Okay, let me make a note. I'm going to shift next week's. Let's reconvene and let's do 2 things next week. Let's put together our list of tips for flight instructors and topics for pilots flying with each other. I'm trying to just reiterate what Bill and Alan and John and Ray and a couple other people have said. And by the way, I called Tim Horton, and I just want to correct that it's Tim Howard. Sorry, Tim, and us in Tim H in Canada. But if we do that next week, then we can run our list by the Kristen Winters and Zach Grants and George Richmonds. And then just we'll have it available as this is not professional advice, use at your own risk, but this is a collection of suggestions from some of the most experienced Comanche instructors and Comanche pilots in the world.
And maybe try to hook that information up with the right insurance guy to show him what we're doing to get this insurance,
Yeah. So Ray, what we'll talk about briefly next week. So I want to add one more thing. There is a rumor that is not correct that older pilots are having more accidents than younger pilots. I'm a mathematician and I know some good statisticians. And I looked at that study, which was done to justify extending the retirement age of commercial pilots to you commercial guys like Alan, correct me. I think it went from 60 to 65.
It might be.
Airline flying?
Yeah.
Yes, the mandatory retirement age did get changed from 60 to 65.
Right.
And that's probably about 10 years ago, I'm guessing. I don't exactly remember.
Well, that study covered pilots up to age.
Only?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering if that was for the SIC only on those, or was it?
No, for part 121, i.e. airline, and I don't know about part 135. I think that, flex jet, those kind of guys.
Yeah.
In fact, I would almost say no on that one, because I do know guys that are flying over 65 with NetJets and stuff. They're flying co-pilots and stuff. But then I think NetJets has a policy where if you're over 70, then you're done, with them. But for FedEx or UPS or Southwest or Delta or American, the part 121 guys, when you hit 65, you're done. You can't fly co-pilot or pilot in command.
Wow.
Now you can fly as a flight engineer. The only problem is nobody's got airplanes with flight engineers anymore.
I have to find a DC-6 in Belize to fly in.
Yeah, or a 727 down in South America or something like
or
that.
part 135
Exactly.
operation.
So-
You want to keep flying commercial. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is that study, and there were a few others, was misinterpreted because of some weird things to the trailing data, because they were taking groups of years and going off to the end of that series. And so the tail end of it, where they were compiling data and getting a smaller and smaller group, was misinterpreted as, older pilots are having accidents. They are not. You guys, they are not. And Baker referenced that, the head of AOPA referenced that. Unfortunately, the thing that they got with the insurance industry still only addressed pilots up to 75, who honestly weren't the ones that really needed the help. It was those over 75 that did. And it looks like this vaunted thing that was coming out didn't work. But what we do have is really good numbers to show that it is, sorry, Adam, but it's the first, like, up to age 30, 35, and when you're new, those are when we're seeing large numbers of accidents. Under 1,000 hours, and then another spike at like 1,200 hours. So be careful, those of us who are getting experience.
There is a fantastic book about that phenomenon. It's called The Killing Zone. There's 2 issues of it, and it does talk about 100 to 350 hours is the most dangerous part of anyone's flying career.
Yeah,
Which
like
I'm right in the middle of.
Oh, are you? Yeah. So we're counting on you to get through it unscathed and with all your airplanes unscathed, Adam. But going back to the other end of the scale, there are a certain type of not very expensive claims that older pilots are more likely to have, that have to do with like getting distracted or having your tow bar left there, or getting new avionics in and not taking the time to get familiar with your new avionics. But something about that. There's old pilots and bold pilots, but there are no old bold pilots seems to be holding true. So that led us to feel that if worst comes to worst and the insurance companies want to persist in discriminating against older pilots, that it would be safe to put a cohort together, a co-op to self-insure, where people could take those premiums that the insurance companies are refusing to accept anymore and put them into a group, so that if we dinged an airplane, we would have some money from that group to help fix our airplanes. And the key thing that made us think that that might be possible were the number of agents who were like, yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years, and the people who never make claims are my older pilot customers. And they were funny. They were like, well, I don't know if it's because they're afraid that if they make a claim, we're going to cut them off. But he's like, I've been doing this for 30, 35 years, and my older pilots are not my people making claims. So there are some people that just can't afford to fly Bear, and we don't want you to stop flying your airplanes. So the idea of doing a co-op, not an insurance company, but a co-op where we pool our funds. And at the end of the year, if nobody makes a claim, well, we just take some of that pool and send it back out to everybody that put in, and in the same proportions that you put in it.
That would be a key thing. You just use the words everybody that put in. If you didn't have enough of these people that I'm looking at on my screen tonight, they all have their insurance. They're not going to be too interested unless you can get this pool ahead of time and safeguard them and their insurance. Then it could work. Otherwise, you're not going to maybe have enough to start.
Yep. We think we would need at least 100 pilots, and Zach Grant is wondering whether we would need to get not just an underwriter, but a reinsurer involved, because he's not sure that we would be able to have most of our older pilots go liability only, so the liability would be covered, leaving just the hull insurance part to be handled by the co-op. So that is TBD. Well, it's been an amazing number of people who have stuck it out this long. I just want to thank everybody for just transforming our airplanes, which we've done together, from something that was going by the wayside to something that's more and more expensive on average. That more and more equipment providers and vendors are seeing fit to invest tens and thousands, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars to create equipment that we need for something that hasn't been built since 1972. We're pretty much alive and kicking out here, and we're getting stronger.
And we're keeping it alive.
Yep. Well, Pete and Robert are both, I think, hoping to stop this recording and go catch some shut-eye. So shall we continue this next week? Will everybody join to help put those lists together and design these weekend fly-ins?
I'm still awake, and CJ, I just made you a co-host. So yes, I am going to stop the recording so I can go do my thing. And I will see you guys all next week.